Eduardo Valdés-Hevia is a horror artist that has recently documented several anomalous diseases. These afflictions are incredibly unordinary, even to the point that some doctors and patients believe the causes to be of supernatural origin. In this video, we'll be investigating these strange diseases and interviewing the attending physician who witnessed and documented them firsthand, Eduardo Valdés-Hevia. Without further ado, let's journey into the nightmarish medical afflictions contained within the VALDEVIA. Entry 1. Chypra Infant. Alterations of small areas of the human genome can have drastic effects. Inducing the expression of the BAR116 region of the HOXD genes induces body differentiation only seen in the highly specialized mammal limbs of bats and colugios. Examples like this one are rare but notable. This is the transcription that sits beside the image of a genetically modified human baby born in the New Dunwich Medical Center. The father was nowhere to be found during delivery. The mother died during childbirth. Only after the mother had passed away did the physicians realize the incredible condition of the newborn. As a result, no one at the facility was able to garner any information about why, how, or who genetically modified this fetus. When parts from different species are mixed, rarely do they result in offspring with such cleanly arranged and functional anatomy. Usually, the combination of several different beings results in a haphazardly assembled organism that yearns only for death. Trust me, been there, done that. However, in this case, it led to a living, viable, and kind of adorable offspring. As is always the case for editing DNA, the effects of inducing the expression of this region of the gene resulted in more than one change to the subsequent being. The ears are pointed like that of a bat, or sexy elf girl, and the teeth are pointed like that of a bat, or sexy possum girl. Alright, I'm sorry, I'll stop. To tell us more about this future superhero/circus freak, depending on how hot they become in adulthood, is the physician who delivered the freak baby, Eduardo Valdés-Hevia. What other instances do you think a modification of a similar gene would cause something similar to this?
To make it functional and living would have to be like a really big coincidence, first of all. But I could see the modifications of similar genes causing like other specialized structures that you wouldn't see in humans. Fin-like structures, different configuration of limbs, digitigrade limbs, that sort of thing.
What do the typical examples of these gene modifications look like?
Typical examples would probably look a lot more tame. You don't see that many changes all at once, but if you get really unlucky and you get that many changes all at once, well, bat baby. You know, other than the obvious symptoms, like you just mentioned, like the fucking bat baby, are there any other symptoms that this child might have? That would be hard to tell just as a baby. You could see some other bat-like things appearing. Maybe if it screeches really hard, you might see in the dark.
Do you think like a human that was structured like this would actually be able to fly?
Most likely not. You would need enormous wings to be able to fly at our weight, especially an adult's weight. Or this kid would need hollow bones, which I don't know. I don't know if he came with hollow bones. We'd have to check. I feel like that would have other issues. You ever see a bird fly into a window? I feel like that'd be bad if it was a person. You know, in humans, we call that osteoporosis. If that kid grows up to be really old and have a bunch of osteoporosis, maybe then it can fly.
That sounds like a really depressing Marvel movie, but I would watch it. Where would you see this being fitting in society?
It's either a sensational thing where everybody goes see the marvelous bat baby and it kind of becomes a circus freak, or guy has so much complex with his weird wings that he just goes off to live in a cave. Eat bugs, maybe?
Sounds like a nice life for anyone.
Yeah, I'd do that.
Follow-up question. We got the world's governments to agree to this. You have the sole ability to determine whether or not this thing has rights, or if we just call it a dirty animal. So...
I think we can give him some rights.
Some rights, so not completely.
As a treat.
Entry 2. Bone molars. Calcium hyperproficiency is a rare complication of vitamin D deficiency, where excess calcium from bone resorption forms complex structures resembling primary teeth. Neoformed teeth grow on different bones, such as this patient's hands, causing fractures and joint dysfunction. A patient was admitted to the New Dunwich Medical Center with complaints of irregular hand lumps growing around his body and extreme pain. Upon initial examination, these lumps were thought to be aggressive bone growth. Following admission, the doctors noticed that several of the newly grown bones were protruding from the skin. An X-ray revealed that rather than being an overgrowth of already existing bone, these were teeth that had taken root in various places along the patient's skeleton. I'm no dentist, but I don't think that's where teeth are supposed to be. Drink lots of milk, they said. You'll get big, strong bones, they said. I'm far too stupid to possibly know the ramifications of any of this. So we have one doctor that claims the tooth fairy isn't real, but insists on keeping all the extra teeth.
What would the treatments be for this condition?
I mean, the first treatment would be correcting the vitamin deficiency. That's pretty easy. The hard treatment is getting all those teeth out. Probably a lot of surgeries. Not great for the bones who've been affected, so you can imagine a lot of screws.
Are the teeth in any way distinct, other than they're in different bones, from ones that grow in the mouth?
They would be less perfectly formed. They're not formed according to a very specific pattern like we got in the mouth. More like maybe tiled teeth, a little more frail, a little bit shittier.
Are there any other warning signs or risk factors for the condition that we know of?
It always starts with weird itching. By the time you notice, there's teeth that are starting to poke out from your skin. Something's growing from the inside, and it's too late. It's too late. You already got it.
What do the extreme late stages of bone molars look like?
It can get pretty bad. I don't think we've seen any case where the entirety of a body is covered, because it's usually more localized to a specific part of the body. But you could see something like a good chunk of a limb, a big patch like in the chest, an entire leg maybe. That's when it gets really bad.
If I get this, do I go to a bone doctor or a dentist?
You need both in the room. They need to collaborate on this. They don't see eye to eye, so you might see some fights in the OR.
You claim the tooth fairy is not real, and yet you keep all the teeth.
Hey, it's a collection, okay? It's a serious collection.
Where's the collection? All I see is a pile of coins.
I won't show you.
Okay. Would you rather have teeth instead of hair, or hair instead of teeth?
Both awful. I think teeth instead of hair, because you don't have to cut it. So you just get a big brush, clean it up. Hair in my mouth is the most horrible sensation, so I choose the big head of teeth.
Entry 3. Watermelon Parasetism. 2 cases of watermelon seeds sprouting inside human intestines were reported in a recent article. Both resulted in a serious bowel obstruction that had to be cleared with surgery. It is unknown how the plants were able to survive and thrive inside the digestive tract, with the authors suggesting a previously unknown facultative parasitism in watermelon plants. A patient was admitted to the New Dunwich Medical Center with a distended abdomen, complaining of gastrointestinal pain. What was initially believed to be a buildup of waste or gas was anything but, shocking the staff upon initial x-ray. Okay, whoever told me that a watermelon wouldn't grow in my tummy if I swallowed the seed is a damn dirty liar. It appears that these fruits have a more insidious strategy than the typical grow in the ground thing that plants typically do. The watermelon grew inside this patient, likely using both their flesh and blood, as well as their waste as fertilizer to grow. The environment of a human body, while somewhat hostile, has a plethora of nutrients and vitamins, so if the seed could avoid digestion and somehow take root, it would have plenty to grow with.
Nature is just so beautiful sometimes. I mean, not right now. This makes me want to eliminate all natural foods from my diet and survive only on McNuggets and plastic, but I don't know, lick a rock or something.
It's unknown if other fruits have a similar strategy of occasional parasitic reproduction, because just now thinking about it, I'm fairly confident I could shit out a strawberry, maybe even an apple, but when it's time to shit out a watermelon, that's definitely when it's hospital time. Maybe people just don't know most of the time, because most fruits are easy to shit out. Also, next time someone says they grew the fruit themselves, just be extra sure you know what that means, because they could have just shit that thing out. For more information on this, I'm gonna go harass the correspondent.
Before we get started, would you like some watermelon? I grew it myself.
I'm pretty full actually. Maybe later.
Do you believe that a watermelon grown inside a human would be different in any way from one grown in the ground?
It's eating something different. It's getting its nutrients from a different source. So probably be redder. I think it would taste a little bit fleshy. Not that I've tried.
Oh god. All right. Are there any recorded instances of this happening with any other fruits, or are like watermelons kind of evil?
It's just the watermelons. The watermelons are specifically evil and they want to mess with people. Yeah.
What are the consequences of growing a watermelon inside the human body?
Imagine a pregnancy, but it's like way higher up, and at the end, you got a nice ripe fruit. Isn't that nice? Oh yeah, you can't get it out the normal way. So it either blows through your intestines or you need to get it out the surgical way. So it would be a C-section, definitely.
Do I get to keep the C-section melon?
Yeah, I mean, it's yours. You grew it. I don't think they can legally take it away from you.
What's the biggest fruit you think you could shit out in one piece without surgery?
Maybe up to an apple. Not a really big apple, though.
Are you sure he didn't just kind of shove it up in there and he's like, oh, I swallowed a watermelon seed. I don't know how this happened.
A guy would need some powerful intestines to get it all the way up to near the stomach. So if that were the case, I would applaud the guy because got some guts.
Entry 4. Hyperacculia. Hyperacculia is a condition where stem cells in the eyes reactivate, producing a series of smaller, false eyes inside the vitreous body. The pseudoocular structures accumulate over time, leading to blindness. Eventually, the pressure created by their growth can be enough to burst through the iris and cornea. The latter was the description coinciding with a recent case of the anomalous disease, hyperacculia. The patient in question had ignored the pain and symptoms with this affliction, even past the point that it caused him to go blind in the afflicted eye. Only after the flesh in his pupil began to burst did he go to the emergency room. In the following operation, surgeons were not able to save his eye. 17 fully formed pseudo-eyes of various sizes were removed from the patient, unfortunately, none of which could be fitted to replace his actual eye. The patient had been placed quite low on the donor list.
But don't worry, he's got his eye on it. Huh? Okay, I'll leave.
For more information about this case, we go to one doctor who I was able to bribe with half a pack of cigarettes.
What are the treatments, if any, for this condition?
You need to get those eyes out before they multiply too much. And you need to do that when it's pretty early because those eyes will have essentially taken over so much of the space within the eye that there's just not enough fluid in there. So even if you remove them, the eye is going to be deflated, so you don't have any pressure inside. If you don't catch it really early, it's probably blindness.
Are there any warning signs or risk factors for this condition? Or is this horrifying thing completely random?
Pretty random. You need to be really unlucky. If you start seeing strange bubbles in your vision, that's probably a good sign to get it checked.
I'm okay. Could one potentially grow one of the pseudo-eyes to be a replacement for the one destroyed by the condition, or are they completely vestigial?
They're pretty much vestigial. They don't have a connection to the ocular nerve, which is pretty vital for an eye. And it's not like you can remove an eye up to the nerve and just connect it to a new one, because, you know, it's like pre-made circuitry. You can't just like slap on some new cables and expect it to work. The retina is part of the nerve, so you can't just plug in a new eye, unfortunately.
Could it just continue to leak eyeballs if you didn't treat it?
I mean, after it bursts, it's kind of a countdown until it gets infected and some bacteria gets in there and eats all of it. I don't think we've seen any case that has gotten that far.
If an eye came out of your eye, would you eat it?
Maybe one, out of curiosity.
Entry 5.
What? How do I say this?
Verukus carcinoma retrovirus. VCRV is a virus that uses reverse transcription to insert its genome into the host cells. In rare cases, this process is unclean, and the resulting viruses may carry fragments of the host's DNA, passing it on to the next animal they infect. In the next host, the foreign DNA is inserted into the genome, which can end up causing a cancer that expresses genes from a completely different species. VCRV usually creates similar cancers to papillomavirus around the mouth and throat. In this case, a dog was infected by its human owners, leading the carcinoma to express human Hox genes that regulate the growth of fingers. An anomalous disease similar to HPV first popped up in the New Dunwich Medical Center. Strangely, someone had decided to bring their dog to the human emergency room, but due to the additional fingers on its face, the doctors decided to admit it on the basis that it had at least some human parts. The physicians examined the animal, but unfortunately, the finger tumor that was on its face was the least of its worries. Even with the removal of this and other finger tumors along with chemotherapy treatment, the cancer was too aggressive, too rapidly developing. Unfortunately, with no cure, the dog would be entirely fingers soon.
Or something goofy like that.
I kept telling people, next week I'm gonna make my fursona live on stream. And everybody was like going crazy, thinking I was gonna make a fursona. And that was my fursona. It was the dog with a human finger tumor. They were very disappointed.
I think that it's a great fursona.
And technically the fursona is a virus itself, but, you know.
I've heard a lot of people on message boards say the same thing, but then they said stuff that concerned me. What are the treatments, if any, for this condition?
It's just like any other tumor. And in most cases, it will just look like a regular tumor. It has to be a really specific and rare set of circumstances where the virus captures a bit of foreign DNA and inputs it into the target's genome, essentially, to create these weird foreign structures. And in those cases, if it's creating foreign structures that aren't part of the body, those tumors would actually have a harder time growing because the immune system will target them more because it's seeing those are human fingers. That doesn't make sense in a dog. So it will target that as a foreign body. That will give it less chances to grow, but it can still grow. And yeah, treatments as any of these tumors, you need to remove them. You might need radiation, you might need chemotherapy, depending on how bad it gets.
Does the dog have any control over the new digits that are grown in its face, or are these completely vestigial?
I feel like there would be some muscle movement, but not something that can really be controlled. It would be more like twitching.
This example is human and dog. Can any two animals that can get this kind of cancer transfer one gene to the other?
Basically, yeah. It's free gene therapy.
Could they be implanted onto a human hypothetically if they got lost a finger? And if they do that, is that essentially just trading cancer for a finger?
Not really. In that specific case, what we get is the Hox genes, which are the genes that essentially instruct the body to create certain structures. In this case, a finger. But we also saw it on the bat baby. The bat baby is also a modification of the Hox genes. Okay, in that case, it creates a wing. The cells inside the fingers are still pretty much entirely dog cells, except for that little bit of human DNA that was put into them. They're basically dog cells that have been instructed to create a finger with whatever they got. So if you put that in a human, it would be recognized as different animals, so that the immune system would target it. You might be able to, but you would need like to have this person on like really, really strong immunosuppressants, just like when you put things like a pig heart as a heart transplant, which has been done.
If I ate the finger ball, would it be cannibalism or eating a dog?
It would be eating a dog with a 0.01% of cannibalism.
I can live with that. Or is it worse?
It's slightly worse than eating a dog, but not as bad as full cannibalism, I would say. You would need St. Peter or whoever judges these to put that in the sin tier list.
I'm okay. I'm Jewish. I'll escape.
Entry 6. Angioradiculoma. Oh wow, I could say that one. Angioradiculoma is a rare type of cancer in the blood vessels, which grow and harden in root-like formations. The growths will often pierce the skin or surrounding organs, leading to bleeding, infections, and other complications that further impact its deadly prognosis. This disease, often unkindly called Groot syndrome, is a fatal anomalous affliction that was also first discovered at New Dunwich Hospital. The disease only begins with slight discomfort, sometimes associated with certain movements. The pain will increase in the afflicted area indefinitely. Oftentimes, the victims don't know the root cause of the pain is a cancer until they go in for examination, as the sharp pains involved mimic many other chronic pain conditions. The hardened blood vessels will slice through the skin and vital organs, and since the source of the blood flow is what's causing the injury, there's nothing that can be done to aid the patient surviving this process.
What would be the treatments, if any, for this condition?
You need to remove those, and you need to go early, because if you don't, they'll just keep growing and spreading, and it'll get real bad, because those are your blood vessels, and if your blood vessels hardens into a solid structure, the blood can't go in there anymore. So your nutrients and oxygen can't get to your actual healthy tissue, which will start rotting, and you will slowly just lose your circulation. If it starts in your hand, fingers will soon start falling off. Soon that'll spread to the rest of your hands. You might need amputation if it gets bad enough.
So it's usually localized to one area and then spreads?
Usually starts in one area, yes. Depends on your area. The symptoms might be quite different. So if we talk about a limb, worst thing that can happen is, yeah, it'll start rotting and you'll start losing the limb. If it's like near your vital organs, you know, those hard structures might start piercing stuff, and then you might start getting like real bad prognosis all of a sudden. common.
Have there ever been any instances of this condition in which it pierces the skin and because it's a blood vessel, like it just leaks out from there?
Oh, it can definitely happen. If you're talking about like a bigger blood vessel, because a smaller one will easily just like harden entirely and just become essentially like a tiny little spear. A larger one, to fully like fuse it, it would need to grow a ton. If you imagine like a bigger blood vessel, which transports a lot more blood, has a harder time like fully closing up like that. If it pierces the skin and just opens up, it can start spurting a bunch of blood, which can be really bad.
Entry 7. Monodontia. Monodontia, commonly known as tombstone teeth, is a rare condition where adult teeth grow fused into a single block. No cure exists apart from complete excision and replacement with dentures, which this patient is undergoing. The causes of monodontia are unknown, but it is thought to be the result of a combined effect of susceptible genetics and infections happening at an early age, affecting the growth of the teeth. Monodontia is another affliction discovered within the halls of the New Dunwich Medical Center. The strange condition causes all of the teeth in the patient's mouth to combine into a single chip clip-like monstrosity. While the root cause of this affliction is yet unknown, why it's an issue is the thing that's yet unknown to me. Like, what exactly is the problem with having one big tooth? I know it's weird, but I bet it can chew good. Seems like it's better than a bunch of little ones. You'd never have to floss, and you only have to brush one tooth. Why have many Cheez-Its when you can have just one Cheez-Them? I get it for aesthetic reasons. I'm just asking the questions that the insurance companies will to try and weasel out of coverage. To answer my many stupid questions, I have kidnapped the same doctor.
Is it possible to live with untreated monodontia?
Imagine you get a cavity or a tooth infection. That's going to affect the whole thing. Your two options are, I'm just going to remove it entirely, get dentures, and forget about the problem, or I got to take extremely good care of my teeth, because if anything happens to your one big tooth, the entire row is fucked up forever.
So is the one big tooth held in place by a lot of little gum holes, or one big gum hole?
At first, it'll still keep the shape of the individual teeth, but eventually over time, those gums would simplify into just one big gum hole.
I liked that sentence. So when pulling one big tooth, are there any precautions that you would take that you wouldn't take when pulling a bunch of little teeth?
Yeah, have you ever had like a retainer, one of those plastic things you need to put at night? Yeah.
Did not like it.
Yeah, you know how you got to pull it from both sides at once? Because if you pull it from one side, it just kind of gets stuck and it hurts.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, imagine that, but with your entire mono tooth. You got to pull it at the same distance on both sides. Otherwise, it can just mess up the entire bones.
How does monodontia affect the speech of the patient?
It doesn't affect it much. The biggest consequence socially is that this guy now has anime teeth. Everybody will point and laugh. We've had patients that come in and paint like little lines in between their teeth so that, you know, it's not that noticeable.
I thought like that you couldn't pronounce T's, and I was laughing to myself like tombstone teeth is such like a cruel name for like somebody who can't pronounce T's, like tombstone teeth.
Entry 8. Nail matrix metaplasia. Nail matrix metaplasia is a cryptogenic disease where the nail bed starts growing, transforming the surrounding skin into multiple matrices that produce their own complete nails. Though its origin is uncertain, it appears to be more common in people who bite their hangnails. Nail matrix was first discovered during a routine checkup at the New Dunwich Medical Center. The patient didn't even remark on the strange state of his left finger, and was more interested in trying to convince the doctor that drinking was in fact okay, even though he had a liver condition. The patient seemed astounded that the physicians were interested in the strange growth on his finger at all. When asked if he knew anything about his condition, he said no, but he did remark that he likes to chew his nails, including the new ones. He laughed and said it gave him a lot more to do when he was anxious. The only new development that the patient reported was that he's never been more satisfied with his ability to scratch himself. For more information on nail matrix metaplasia, we go to our field expert, who I'm not holding at gunpoint.
Is the generation of new nail matrices painful in any way?
It's not painful at first. The nail bed before the nail starts growing would definitely be like more sensitive than your regular skin. A bit sore and annoying, but not quite painful. When the nails start growing though, and they start breaking skin and creating hangnails, that is where it gets annoying and painful.
Are there any other warning signs or risk factors other than just chewing your hangnails?
Not that we know, since it's quite rare. We only know that there's this correlation with biting your hangnails, but we don't quite know how one influences the other. It's a cryptogenic disease. That means the origin is cryptic.
Are there any other side effects to this disease other than just growing more fingernails around your fingers?
Imagine I have a bunch of fingernails that are growing in different directions. Imagine just getting that caught in a door and pulling one of those fingernails back. That would be extremely painful, first of all. High risk for infection. You need to take really good care of your little fingernail pineapple so that it doesn't get a bunch of gunk under the nails. If that finger gets infected, it's probably gonna have to go.
Are the treatments just pulling the nails out? Or would that make it a lot worse?
Oh no, pulling them out would make it so much worse. If for aesthetic purposes, you do want to remove them, yes, you would need to pull them out as they come out, but that wouldn't remove the fact that underneath it's just a bunch of nail matrices. So the finger's gonna look messed up no matter what you do.
Would you rather have fingernails for teeth or teeth for fingernails?
Teeth for fingernails. Teeth for fingernails. It'll go great with my hair teeth as well.
It's true, you could tap them against each other and make a nice...
Oh, imagine the sound, yeah.
Entry 9. JPEG Compression. JPEG compression is a serious disease that impacts thousands every year. To avoid the risk of infection, refrain from touching heavily compressed images with your bare hands. What can at first seem like a minor loss of detail in your fingers can quickly spread to the rest of your body and become life-threatening. JPEG compression was discovered when one of the nurses at the New Dunwich Medical Center made the mistake of sharing a low-resolution meme. The meme, Freak Bob, a classic which will never go out of style, was compressed even further when she texted it to another associate at the hospital. And after she touched the meme with her bare hands, the compression infected the tips of her fingers. It was very minor at first, and she didn't even notice the compression itself. The next day at work, the staff noticed that she was distinctly less detailed. The nurse protested that she was fine, until she was shown her own reflection, and she couldn't make out her own facial features due to lost resolution. She was rushed to the OR, but within hours, she was nothing but muddy pixels. Pixels to pixels, data to dust. To understand more about this affliction, we go to a guy who has also seen a Freak Bob meme.
Does touching any compressed image cause this, or does it have to be within a certain format?
It has to be a specifically compressed JPEG image at a low quality that you touch directly. If it's been transformed to PNG, it lessens the effect. It's like a protective cover over the image.
What are the complications of intense detail loss in a patient?
One of the biggest things you'll start seeing is that the structures in the body that are really small and complex will start blending together into globs. So the easiest way to see this is with your hair. You know, your hair will stop being individual strands and it'll become a sort of block. In your intestines, there are incredibly small folds. Those will be affected, and we need those folds because it increases the surface of your intestine so you can absorb more nutrients. They can end up having like pretty big like nutrient deficits. That would be one of the first things you'd notice with JPEG compression.
Are there any treatments for JPEG compression?
Actually never thought about this. There are no known treatments for JPEG compression. There are some experimental treatments that are being tried, basically locking you into a chamber, listening to really, really clean audio, only being exposed to like really crisp, high quality screens. That can at least lessen it, but you know, it's still too early to tell.
Sounds like a Scientology torture chamber, but you're the doctor here, so. Was there any example of anything like this before the modern era, or is this a relatively modern disease?
There's been some scattered reports back in the 1850s about people with these really early photographies. The damage these pictures would get is different. They would get things like scratches, and through the exposures, they would lose detail and essentially get more blurry as you try to copy the image, and the small defects would get amplified, eventually get pictures that are essentially blobs of black and white. This is what has been described to happen to some photographers who work with a lot of photos.
Entry 10. Crystalline conjunctival hypertrophy. Crystalline conjunctival hypertrophy is a rare symptom of cadmium buildup in the blood. Small deposits in the conjunctiva eventually grow into large relapsing crystals that protrude out of the eye. The first sign is usually an excess of floaters in your vision. I wonder if having a cadmium crystal poke out through your eye hurts. Probably. This disease was, again, first found in the New Dunwich Medical Center. The only symptom that the patient expressed before the extreme result was having an excess of eye floaters. This is concerning, because eye floaters are usually a casual and benign part of the human experience. But now, according to that lady, it means you're about to get stabbed in the eye from the inside. It's unknown what, if anything, differentiates a regular eye floater from one that can develop into a crystalline structure, nor what can lead to the excess cadmium buildup in the blood. I'd say, if you're eating a lot of cadmium for any reason, this is probably a good time to stop that. For more information on this disease, we go to our resident expert, Dr. Eduardo Valdés-Hevia.
What do the most severe cases of this disease look like when untreated?
You can imagine the entire eye being covered in crystals of different sizes, to the point where obviously this person can't see. It's pierced or covered the entirety of your iris and your pupil, so you can't even see the structures of the eye. It's just like a big crystal.
Is there any way to tell the difference between a regular eye floater and like one that means I'm gonna get stabbed in the eye?
These floaters are crystals. They're not clumps of proteins. They're not rounded or little squiggly worms. They're more like crystalline structures. They look like little squares or hexagons.
Is it painful?
It is not painful at first. The crystals themselves growing don't cause much pain, but blinking when you have a crystal in your eye, you can imagine it'll cause a lot of damage to your eyelids, and you'll still need to blink.
Are there any treatments for this condition, or is it just kind of pulling it out?
So you need to do something called chelation, where you take the specific compound, what causes the crystals, right? You need to take that out of your blood, which is essentially like taking your blood out, passing it through a filter to specifically remove this, and then putting it back in.
Entry 11. Bone pearls. Post-mortem cross-section of a femur affected with bone pearls, also known as osteoperlomas. While initially harmless, these shimmering benign tumors can lead to major fractures. Despite this, bone pearls have been prized throughout history, leading some to induce their formation for later harvesting. Bone pearls are usually induced by injecting small calcium carbonate impurities into the bloodstream. They become embedded in the bone tissue and cause abnormal osteoblast growth, leading to osteoperlomas. Surgical induction may also be performed to obtain pearls of the desired shapes. At first, it was believed that only certain species of mollusks produce pearls. But once little Timmy's shin bone fucking exploded with what would become the new family fortune, science has had to adapt to the new reality. Bone pearls were one of the first anomalous diseases discovered in the New Dunwich Medical Center, and this affliction has existed in the public knowledge for so long that it isn't even considered anomalous anymore. Bone pearls are still used around the world in jewelry, and while it is taboo to create them artificially, many people will sell any pearls that form in their own body as a way to pay for the medical procedure that it took to remove them. Either that, or they wear them on their form as a mark of how they survived the trauma. It's like getting your teeth pulled and then keeping them in a jar on your desk, which is a normal thing to do. Bone pearls, if left untreated, can lead to paralysis and infection. To learn more about bone pearls, here's our doctor who just got done injecting a patient with what he insists isn't a calcium carbonate impurity and is just medicine.
Are bone pearls only an occurrence in humans, or do they come in other animals too?
It can happen in other animals, mammals specifically. The difference for us is that the human ones are the most valuable ones. The other ones are kind of like fakes. There's definitely been, throughout history, a bunch of attempts of passing off horse bone pearls as humans. People will try to fake anything if it's valuable. The real ones will always keep their value despite that.
Describe the process of removing a bone pearl in early history.
In early history, you would need to essentially remove the bone first, because the process of removing a bone pearl without harming the bone too much would be inconceivable at that time. If you were to induce it, or if it just happened and and you wanted to remove it, you would have to, for example, remove that leg, and then you open the bone and fish it out.
How do they do it nowadays?
I mean, nowadays there's better surgery. You will essentially locate the bone pearl, remove the pearl itself and a little bit of the tissue around it, fill that in with some cement.
Is bone pearl induction still legal?
No, it's very legal. People will still do it. It's valuable, so people will do it to themselves in an attempt to get a lot of money by selling your bone pearls if you get any good ones, or pay other people to get bone pearls if you're especially evil.
Dude, that first thing you just mentioned is like a Lovecraftian version of someone faking slipping on a puddle of pee at Walmart. Do you have any bone pearls yourself?
I can't comment on that. You know, having bone
Did you get
pearls.
them from injecting calcium into the underprivileged?
Who told you that?
Can I have some? I'll be quiet.
We'll talk after this call.
Entry 12. Argulosis. Argulosis is a rare autoimmune disorder. The soft tissues of those affected degenerate through saponification, progressively rendering them into a malleable texture, similar to clay. It ultimately leads to infectious complications that may become fatal. I don't know why you guys are complaining. Imagine if you had Play-Doh for skin. You'd never be bored again. You could build a castle out of your right man boob, and your left man boob can be the moat. In reality, this disease destroys the tissue's ability to maintain structure in any meaningful way, shape, or form. It reduces the patient to nothing but biomass. This affliction was again discovered in the New Dunwich Medical Center. The patient was admitted to the emergency room with the unknown anomalous affliction, and within 30 minutes, her flesh had shifted to the point that she no longer even resembled a human shape. Instead, a lump of flesh-colored clay with a skeleton inside. Fortunately, this was not in vain, as she has been moved to the toy chest of the pediatric wing waiting room. To understand more about the causes and effects of this disease, we go to our resident expert, who just got done making some really cool pink thing out of the weird smelly clay.
What do the most extreme cases of this condition look like?
So imagine like an entire section of your body that is essentially turned into Play-Doh. All the structures inside have become non-viable as they slowly merge into each other and become this blob. So you better hope that the section it affected wasn't any vital organs. You better hope it was something like a limb. It would be fun to play with at least.
Fun to play with, not to eat? Maybe to eat. Are there any warning signs for this condition?
It would definitely start with a slow like softening of tissue. You know how you can like pull your skin a little bit? Slowly it would just start getting worse and worse. And eventually it wouldn't like bounce back. You would pull on that skin and it would stay there.
What are the other complications for having Play-Doh for skin?
Your skin, fat, muscle, eventually even like the bone will start blending into each other. Like it removes the distinction between different tissues. They all become this one single tissue. So any function that was there gets broken down and disappears. Let's say you got your arm, your muscles will slowly start working. So your arm will just fall limp as it just turns into more and more of a blob.
If you had this disease, would you draw any sort of shapes on yourself?
Maybe not draw shapes, but I definitely would make some cool sculptures with it. If I had it in my head, I would definitely make some cool hairdos.
Saponification is the process used to turn animal fats into soap. Does this have anything to do with your shop on Etsy?
No comments.
I just
No
noticed you're
comments.
selling a lot of soap.
No comments.
Because of the frequency and amount of anomalous diseases that pop up at New Dunwich, some have come to believe that the hospital itself has a tendency to create or attract otherworldly afflictions. Stranger still, these afflictions are entirely unheard of until their discovery at New Dunwich, at which point, cases start popping up all over the world. To get a better understanding of these diseases in the context of the documentation, we call on the hospital's resident expert, Eduardo Valdés-Hevia, one more time.
Which of these diseases has been the most threatening to humanity on a large scale?
I mean, it's all hypothetical, right? But when I made it, I was thinking
What do you mean hypothetical? What do you mean when you made it?
I mean, it's not real. You know that, right?
I set up this whole interview. What do you mean it's not real? We've been talking for an hour.
You know,
You made me look like a fool in front of all these people. Why are the macabre areas of medical study inspiring to your art?
I mean, I studied medicine, so for me, it's part of my background, and I feel like through studying medicine, seeing really gross images in my textbooks, and then going on to see, you know, what it's actually like with patients and stuff, I cured myself of most like icks. It makes it easier for me to actually like think about it in a more detached way where I can try to make horror with it. The icks I didn't get cured of. Things like parasites to me are a good example of this. As much as I studied parasites, there's still like something deeply upsetting about them to me. So I like to explore those things.
Why would you say the area of like medical hoaxes in specific are fascinating?
In society, the role of a doctor is a little bit sacred, quote unquote. We place a special trust on doctors and on medicine that when that trust is broken makes for some like really interesting stories. And using the language of medicine, you can also like get people into a state where they will trust what you're saying and they will trust that this fake thing that you're presenting, this horror story, they will fully believe it's real until they're done and they think about it for a minute. That moment when they're reading it, they believe it's real, and that's like a way to directly inject horror into your brain through the skeptic part of it.
On the topic, what would you say is the most important part to making like an effective, realistic, and believable artistic hoax piece?
You need to have a little bit of reality injected into it. If it's fully made up, it's not gonna like pass through that skeptical filter that we have in our brains. You need to have like some sort of base in reality or some comparison to real things that people might have heard of to make it feel more believable. For example, bone teeth is obviously fake, but a lot of people have heard of teratomas, which is a type of tumor that will develop things like hair and teeth. That already has people primed to thinking like, yeah, teeth growing where they shouldn't be is a thing. You can use that implicit trust as a way of getting people to believe the horror for a second.
What is it about these fears that you think makes them universal?
I think everybody's afraid of bad health. Everybody's afraid of their bodies changing in ways that they can't control. I feel like that's a primal, universal sort of fear.
If you had to catch one of these diseases yourself, which would you pick?
Oh, that's a hard one. I feel like Monodontia is the
You
least
just take
threatening
good
one.
care of it, you know?
Brush your big tooth. Simple as that. All my art has been propaganda for dental hygiene. Brush your teeth, folks. Oh, God.
You had that.
I had that. I have props.
So if you had to choose one of these diseases you'd want to catch least, what would it be?
I would say, I don't know catch any of these, but probably Argulosis. It is, or Argulosis. I don't know how to pronounce my own words. It's kind of a gross thing to have, your own body just becoming Play-Doh.
I would definitely eat some of me just to see real quick.
Just a little pinch.
Which one of these diseases would you say is closest to reality?
Either the crystalline conjunctival hypertrophy or bone pearls. Weird crystals growing in your body due to the accumulation of bad stuff in your blood. It already happens. It's called gout. Kidney stones. Having that growing in a different part of your body, I could see that.
Has there ever been an instance where someone believed your work to the extent that it was a little bit of like an issue?
Not to the point where people have believed it for a really, really long time. I tend to get like several types of reactions. The first one, the sort of intended reaction is, oh my God, I nearly believed this. Or for a second, I thought this was real. You really scared me. But then there's a few different ways to come off of that realization. There's people who will say, oh, you scare me. That was good art. Good job. Most people will do that. Some people will get angry at being tricked. I've had some guy replying to me on social media and to people who like quote tweeted me, angrily replying like, this guy's a fake, he's spreading misinformation. He said the words, he's eroding the trust of a rational society.
You gotta love those guys because they think that everybody else 100% believes it.
Yeah. And then there's also like the longer con where the x-ray with the teeth growing from the bones. Somebody posted that to Facebook years ago. This image is from 2021, so it's been years. Slowly got spread through Facebook. At some point, I saw a dentist page on Facebook posting it like, do you think this is real? And the comments were saying like, oh, I don't think so. I think that's Photoshop. But through that, it got to like a circle of like medical influencer types. And the other day, I saw this image reposted to Threads of all places with the username something 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 MD, an actual doctor who's just reposting a bunch of these sorts of images without checking them. And it's like, what do you think the diagnosis is? And people in the comments are taking it seriously. I'm like, oh god, this image has escaped me. I can't do anything anymore. So sometimes an image will, like, through this process, will eventually reach the Instagram account of a guy who claims to be a doctor. I don't know if he really is, because if he really was, he would have a little bit of critical thinking, but it's all kinds of doctors.
If he's a doctor, I don't want him to be my doctor. I want to live.
Me neither.
Are you planning on inventing any new strange, horrific diseases in the future?
I'm on it right now. I'm doing a piece. It's called Pathologic Pareidolia. You know pareidolia?
No.
When you see, like, let's say a house that has 2 windows and a garage door, and it kind of looks like a face, that's pareidolia. That's when you see things that look like faces. The reason for that is your brain is so good at recognizing, categorizing faces. We have an entire part of our brain that's dedicated pretty much entirely to that. Sometimes it'll see things that aren't faces, and just through pattern recognition, it'll recognize it as a face. So I thought it would be fun if there was like a version of this that was so extreme that you saw faces everywhere, like all you see is faces.
I would never recommend anybody take drugs, but like if you're looking for inspiration for this one specific thing, I gotta say acid. Like
Eduardo Valdés-Hevia is a horror artist that has recently documented several novel parasites. These creatures are unordinary and disturbing, even to the point that some doctors believe the causes to be of anomalous origin. In this video, we'll be investigating these strange parasites and interviewing the attending physician who witnessed and documented them firsthand, Eduardo Valdés-Hevia. Without further ado, let's journey into the nightmarish medical afflictions contained within the VALDEVIA. Entry 1. Saculina spinalis. Saculina spinalis is a bizarre parasitic barnacle that targets almost all vertebrates, including humans. When the larva pierces the skin near the spine, it loses most identifiable organs, becoming a network of root-like threads that grows to envelop the spinal cord. When its brood pouch is mature, it guides its host to seek water, where it can release its larvae. The mechanisms for this influence are thought to be a combination of direct movements of the spine and electrical signals sent to the spinal cord. This bizarre parasitic barnacle was first discovered on a patient who was brought to the ER of the New Dunwich Medical Center after being saved from drowning. The victim didn't report any fear of the drowning incident, nor any memory of it. The only thing that the patient would respond to, more than a nod or a grunt, was any notion of water. She would gulp down any that was brought to her the moment it arrived, and a particularly burly nurse had to save her from drowning herself in a clogged hospital toilet. Later that night, staff had to subdue her several times to keep her from jumping from a 4-story window that oversaw the lake across from the hospital. Upon a full physical, it was determined that the giant fucking pulsating tumor on her back was obviously the cause. While many facets of this creature's reproduction remain mysterious, researchers at New Dunwich can't help but draw comparisons between this parasite's method of reproduction and the horsehair worm. The horsehair worm is a parasite that can only reproduce in water. They typically infect crickets, and leads them to drown themselves in water so that the worms can find a suitable mate. To find out more about how these barnacles fuck, I accosted the lead scientist credited with their discovery.
Does the fact that this parasite makes its host seek water denote similar evolution to the horsehair worm?
It's one of the things parasites will do. Control their hosts to continue their life cycles. If their life cycle involves water, like many parasites, they will try very hard to make their hosts seek water, and this is no exception.
Does the human infected with this parasite make up a conscious reasoning as to why they're seeking water, or is this just a compulsion?
Humans will always rationalize things that are unconscious. If your brain parasite is telling you, seek water, you'll say, oh god, I'm so thirsty. Where's a river? I'm dirty as hell. I need to clean up in this ocean right now.
Does the barnacle's close proximity to the spinal cord ever cause complications?
The barnacle has to be careful. It has to have a bit of a gentle touch. Across the spinal cord, it can lead to paralysis. The fact that it's entering from the outside into the spine, creating a sort of connection from your soft tissues into your nervous system, creates a pretty big risk for infection. That's definitely a risk that the barnacle will try to avoid, but can happen.
How does one typically contract this parasite?
You would need to get in contact with the larvae for this thing. It will pierce its way inside, and once it gets inside, it will shed away all of its exoskeleton because now it wants to be blob. Blob is the ideal form of parasite, just little tendrils that crawl all over and mess with things.
Are there any treatments for this blob?
You gotta kill it. That's the first thing. If you manage to kill it, you then have to remove all the little tendrils that it put everywhere, which might be really hard if it's really extended.
After the host enters the water, paint me a nice little word picture about this barnacle's reproduction from that point.
So you see the image, how it has a big blob near the skin? That's full of eggs. It's getting ready to release them out into the ocean. As you enter the water, something will burst out of your back. Tiny little larvae will start hatching and escaping through the water.
Happy Mother's Day. Yay.
Entry 2. Syatho Linguualia. Syatho Linguualia is a parasite that targets mammals, including rare cases in humans. The infection starts with inhalation of the egg. The juvenile travels to the mouth, where it cuts the tongue's blood vessels, causing necrosis. The isopod then takes the place of the tongue. The louse will attach to the tongue stub and coordinate with its muscle movements to imitate the actions the tongue performed. With enough training, someone infected can regain a way to speak. The tongue louse was first discovered when a patient was admitted to the New Dunwich Medical Center for an inability to speak and a loss of his taste. When he opened his mouth, physicians knew immediately what the prognosis was. A small grayish arthropod that resembled a pill bug, only much larger, took the place of his tongue. While the patient couldn't speak in a traditional sense, he could get close to certain words by manipulating the position of the louse. It almost looked as if the louse knew what he was trying to say, and moved to aid him. It was obvious that the louse was its own conscious creature, but it seemed like it was on some level cooperating with its host. While the staff said they could remove it with surgery, it would leave him completely mute, rather than his current condition. The physician sent him home, taking no action to remove the louse, instead recommending the patient learn to bond with his new tongue, and giving him an unlimited free refill of oxycodone. Besides, the doctor said, some girls might be into that kind of thing.
When you say, with enough training, someone infected can regain a way to speak, does it sound anything like normal human speech, or is it painfully obvious that they're garbling nonsense with a parasitic louch?
It definitely feels garbled. It doesn't have the full range of motion that a tongue does. So you're definitely limited. But most of all, you don't have to train yourself. You have to train this animal to do your bidding. Definitely a big learning process. Needs a lot of treats. You need treats for that thing.
Are there any benefits to having this louse? I feel like it could maybe floss you.
It would definitely clean up the inside of your mouth because it needs to eat whatever leftover bits from your food. It would definitely act as floss, for sure.
If I use the little limbs on my tongue louse on my girlfriend to perform cunnilingus, is that bestiality and will I be going to jail?
Only if they catch you, first of all. Second of all, you need to have a really good relation with your louse for that. You gotta do some training sessions.
It's a lot of treats.
Yeah, you need to clicker train that beast.
Do you think that if someone gets this louse, anyone will ever kiss them again?
Some people are gonna be into that. You know it. You've been online.
My other question. So does the louse ever need to poop?
Yeah, of course. Like any animal.
So it just does that in the mouth.
Yeah. Down the throat. Down the hatchet it goes.
You can't really taste it, so it's okay. Well, I mean, I guess that doesn't mean it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not okay, but you won't really get the poop taste. So.
Entry 3. Cucetta Amatrophica. Cucetta Amatrophica, commonly known as leechweed, is the only parasitic plant known to target animals. The plant burrows under the skin using modified roots known as Hypertrophy. It does not produce leaves or chlorophyll to photosynthesize, as it consumes nutrients through the host's blood. Infestation in humans rarely progresses to the blooming stage, when it becomes dangerous and potentially lethal. A patient infected with leechweed was admitted to the New Dunwich Medical Center. He complained of muscular weakness and fatigue, but because the plant was not in the blooming phase yet, physicians didn't know the cause until they ran an initial blood test. Samples were taken from the patient, after which he was sent home. Unfortunately, when the blood test came back, staff at New Dunwich Medical knew what happened before the news reported a massive leechweed infestation in the neighborhood of the patient the following day.
What's the danger associated with the blooming stage? Is it infectious?
Yes, the blooming stage is when it tries to get new hosts. Definitely got to be careful with exposure at that time. But most of all, the blooming stage is when it exits the skin. It'll break through the skin in many places. High risk of secondary infection. The bacteria in your skin going like, hey, it's a new real estate down here. Let's go have a party. It's already kind of weakened by having that first infection. So it can definitely lead to some like pretty nasty soft tissue sort of infections that can become the more life-threatening thing.
Describe the infection process for a new victim of this disease.
The seeds for this plant are very small, airborne. They have a sort of mechanism. You can imagine like a tiny little drill. They will attach to your skin and then pierce its way inside. It's small enough that you won't feel it like a pinch. It's more like a mosquito bite where you're probably not noticing it. It will try to get the important bit of the seed inside. The rest will fall off.
What are the treatments, if any, for this condition?
If you catch it early and you know there are some seeds somewhere under your skin, the seed fell in here, it burrowed in, you have this little pimple-like thing, but imagine you have like 100 of these all over your arm because of where the seeds fell. You need to go with a tiny little scalpel, cut, pull, and remove all of them individually and hope you don't miss any. If it's later than this, the plant has taken roots, you basically can only hope that you don't infect more people, hope that it doesn't cause any more major damage, but other than that, nothing else to do.
What are the major complications that come from a plant burrowing under your skin with modified roots?
Those roots can do some damage. They can get into your soft tissues. If they get deep enough, get into the muscle or even down to bone. Big risk of infection there every time you pierce through the bone, especially with something that comes from the outside that maybe brought in some bacteria. The roots themselves can cause damage, but they mostly open up like doors for other infections to come in and do the real damage there.
Entry 4. Human parasitoid wasp. Human host infected by the parasoid wasp, uterus cephalophagia. The wasp lays its egg under the skull. The larvae then eats the brain tissue over years, mimicking its nerve signals to keep the host alive. Once it replaces the brain, it molts into its final form, ready to hatch. The most recent case of parasitoid wasp infection at the New Dunwich Medical Center stirred up quite a commotion. Staff was again unaware that the patient was infected with a brain bug at the time of admittance. It was during a routine medical checkup. A man came in with his wife, who, when interviewed after the commotion, said that despite what was discovered, her husband didn't seem all that different as of late, maybe a bit duller. Although, she said he didn't really do all that much of note normally anyways. Oh, fuck you, marry him. The incident happened when a nurse left the room to get equipment to take blood. When she returned, the patient was collapsed on the ground, and a giant wasp covered in chunks of brain viscera flew from the room, out an open window, and up into the sky.
Nature is just so beautiful sometimes. I mean, not right now. This makes me want to fill a hornet's nest with hot lead, but I don't know, man. Rub your lizard.
To get info on how much we should worry about this sky wasp, here's a guy that promises it was not his job to catch it.
Does the host have any idea that its brain is slowly being eaten and replaced by a wasp?
Not really. You'll get things like headaches, the typical symptoms of something growing in your brain, but it's not really causing a ton of pressure, like let's say a cancer would, where it starts growing and causing pressure, and that can lead to all sorts of symptoms. In this case, it's eating through and it's growing at the same rate it's eating, so it's not creating a massive imbalance in pressure, unless you happen to have an X-ray or an MRI or something done while the process is happening. You probably don't know.
We could be wasps right now. Does the host's friends or family notice any change in personality, or is the wasp effective at mimicking the personality of the patient?
It's pretty effective. It'll essentially learn as it eats and is in contact with the part of the brain that's been eaten. It will like mimic the patterns of electrical impulses that used to be there. So it'll communicate with the rest of the brain in a really sophisticated way where it's like learning as it grows. It might cause some differences because the mimicking is not going to be 100% perfect. Friends and family might start noticing some like behavioral changes perhaps. This morning person became a night person. Things like this that not necessarily like change in personality, but changes in habits and stuff.
Are there any people out there that you think might be, just a bit smarter with a wasp brain instead? Maybe this is an improvement.
Definitely. I know some people that could benefit from a little wasp.
All right. I mean, it's not all bad. Are there any risk factors for this condition other than like having a thin skull or...
The way it enters through the roof of the mouth or through the nose, so this little wasp will pierce through the thinner part of your skull. Just don't live where they live. Don't sleep too hard because you might not notice.
Are they that big, like when they get out of the skull? So you just have like a wasp straddling your face, the size of your face.
Yeah.
Just like deep humping into you. That's not a good image in my mind.
No, it's not. It's not very pleasant.
When the wasp hatches, paint another pleasant little word picture of what exactly happens in this hellscape.
When it hatches, it has through eating damaged the structure of the skull a little bit, enough that it's just a little bit weak. It'll use the sutures that already exist in the skull to break those open and act as its egg, usually the top here. And
Happy Mother's Day, everyone. I really hope I can get one of these out, like around there.
Entry 5. The Devil Mask. The Devil Mask, Catacanthus diabolus, is a species of shield bug that uses humans as intermediate hosts for their larvae. A devil mask will latch onto its victim's face, injecting them with a psychoactive compound. This makes the host blissfully unaware of the insect as they swallow its eggs. The egg-laying process is short, only taking a few minutes before the devil mask flies off, leaving the host with no recollection of the event. Eggs have an acid-resistant coat to survive the stomach. They then hatch in the intestine, traveling down as they feed and grow. A recent host of the devil mask larvae has begun treatment after her entrance to the New Dunwich Medical Emergency Room. The patient complained of an intense stomach pain, as if she had a buildup of gas that she couldn't expel, despite how much her OnlyFans patrons tipped her. The physician attending her case asked if she could recall anything that could have caused this. She said that the only thing of note she could remember is that her friends lied and said she briefly had a giant bug scuttling around on her face. She remarked that they were just jealous. They're always up my ass about something. After doing imaging of her lower intestines, it appears that her friends were not the ones up her ass at all.
What happens when the devil mask larvae are done feeding and growing?
they just go through the intestines. As they're done feeding and growing, they'll go through different stages of larvae to adults. When they're done, they'll go out the other side.
Oh, so you just shit them out? That's not too bad.
I mean, it's a living.
It's not the best thing I've shat out.
It happens.
It does? I feel like it shouldn't. Does the devil mask use any other animal as its host, or is it solely adapted to humans?
It's mostly adapted to humans. As with most parasites, it evolved along with us. It can definitely also target closely aligned species like chimpanzees and bonobos.
What are the treatments, if any, for this condition?
I mean, if you already got them inside, you gotta get a big dose of bug killer down your throat. Hopefully that gets all of them. Otherwise, you just wait and they'll get out on their own.
Is it painful to poop them out?
I mean, you don't poop them out consciously, right? They get out. They gotta push their way out.
I would feel like maybe when I'm pushing something else out, they would just fall out too.
I mean, yeah, they might just hitch a ride, but they're pretty big, right? So they would be their own payload.
I like how the poop beetle has spawned the most side conversation. What does the injection administered by the devil mask feel like? Has anybody ever harvested the psychoactive compound from the devil mask and used it as a drug?
It's something pretty similar to DMT. It's more of a cocktail. There's several things in there. I don't know if anybody has tried to harvest it, but it would definitely be a pretty good psychoactive compound. I bet someone is trying to mash up some devil masks and snort that in, see what it feels like.
People leaving the devil mask, if it's like DMT, maybe they're having just full-on religious experiences. Shit, that'd be a good way to be I can't get rid of this. This is my bug baby.
It's
God
my bug
gave
baby.
it to me.
Exactly.
This devil mask has got game. That came out wrong, but for the video, it's right. Do the larvae just eat your poop?
I mean, when they're low enough and what's in there is poop, yeah, that's what they got to eat.
Would you have to poop less?
Depending on how many eggs this thing got into you in the time it had, how many survived through the stomach acid and stuff, you'd probably poop less over time.
Entry 6. The Cavity Weevil. The cavity weevil, Curculio dentalis, is a parasite of mammalian teeth. It drills through the enamel with its long rostrum, depositing eggs in the soft pulp. The larvae eat through the supporting tissues of the tooth, making them rot to leave an opening for the adult to exit. Their name comes from the belief that these weasels use pre-existing weaknesses, like cavities, to help them break through the enamel. Despite that, C. dentalis has been observed puncturing fully healthy teeth. Studies show that their jaws are reinforced with iron and copper, making them into effective drills. Cavity weevils were first documented in a shocking turn of events when a physician at New Dunwich asked for a patient to simply say "ah." The doctor aimed his light into the patient's mouth and was shocked and disgusted as thousands of sets of minuscule compound eyes turned to face the light. When she opened her maw, a cacophony of clicking and scuttling filled the room for only a moment and was silenced by the occurrence of a new light. An army of insects dissecting and feeding on her molars. Her mouth was a hive. The physician asked if the condition was painful, to which she scoffed and said, "Of course." When asked why she didn't relay her pain to the doctor initially, she said, and I quote, "You're a doctor, not a dentist. I don't have insurance, nor do I know how it works, so I'll be damned if I let you pill jockeys scam me." The doctor was just as confused as you are probably hearing this right now.
So I was doing some tooth surgery shit. I told everybody about these surgeries, but I didn't tell a lot of people why. And I was really tired of just getting bombarded by work. So I just sent your art piece to a few people. And I just went dark for a day. And then I was like, oh no, I'm just getting veneers. That's just related to a project I'm doing. How do cavity weevils get from one mouth to another? Is it kissing?
Definitely sharing drinks, kissing, anything that would port directly or indirectly your mouth next to someone else's mouth. But they're also beetles that can fly. They can climb around, so they can try to get in on their own. If they catch you unaware, if they catch you sleeping, they might try to force their way in and munch on some teeth.
What do the most extreme cases of this infection look like?
Let's say you got just a couple teeth infected, right? Not too bad, you lost a couple teeth. But those weevils, as they leave, one is male, one is female, might just reproduce, have a bunch more babies, infect the rest of your teeth, and just create a sort of wave of tooth infections where they get all your mouth, or most of it. No teeth at all.
What are the treatments for this condition? Don't tell me to brush my teeth, because I won't do it.
Sorry, you gotta brush your teeth. The smell of a dirty mouth would definitely attract these little guys. That would be preventive. If you already got it, you're kinda screwed. You might try to drill a hole in your tooth, get one out, but I'm not a dentist. I'm a doctor, so I don't know what dentists would do. That's their problem, not mine.
Have any cavity weevils ever been tamed or domesticated for their natural drilling abilities?
I don't know, what would you use them for though? Oh, for dental surgery?
Yeah.
I don't know if you could train a weevil out of its natural instincts to put an egg in whatever hole it drills.
We just take the egg out, but then why not just use a regular drill? That's a good point. I feel like the weevil is an extra step.
The weevil's an extra step. It would definitely be cool to train a few of them, like a flea circus, to get in your mouth and just do all the surgery by themselves. I would trust that more than a dentist.
If I got cavity weevils and a tongue louse, do you think they'd be friends, or do you think they'd fight?
I don't think the tongue louse would like to have the cavity weevils there. The teeth are its house. It's protection from the outside. Imagine you're living in your house, which is someone's mouth, but that's beside the point. A bunch of little guys come in and start having babies in your walls and destroying them. Would you kick them out? Yeah, I would kick them out. I'd eat them. It's food for the louse, which is bigger.
I would eat the wall babies.
I would eat the wall babies.
How can someone tell, other than seeing a beetle in your mouth, that this is a disease that is not just related to general hygiene and decay? Because if they are inside your teeth, like drilling within, you might not be able to see them immediately.
No, you wouldn't see them for a while. You'd pretty much only see them when they're ready to get out. So when they're already pupated and have become the adult weevil. Either that, or as we can see in the image, there's one tooth that decayed a bit too fast. We can still see the larva in there.
Because of the frequency and amount of anomalous parasites that pop up at New Dunwich, some have come to believe that the hospital itself has a tendency to create or attract otherworldly infestations. Stranger still, most of these afflictions are entirely unheard of until their discovery at New Dunwich, at which point, cases start popping up all over the world. To get a better understanding of these diseases in the context of the documentation, we call on the hospital's resident expert, Eduardo Valdés-Hevia. When did you first discover the cavity weevil?
I mean, I didn't discover it, but when I made it and when I created this image,
Fool me once, Eduardo! Why are parasites, in specific, so fascinating to you?
when studying medicine, the only thing that still, after 6 years of studying every gross thing in existence, it's the only thing that still grosses me out. I think there's like a base fear that's behind it. Loss of control, like something taking over your body or part of it. Parasites perfectly embody this sort of body horror of something taking control of your body.
What is the most important part of creating a realistic fake parasite?
Same reasons that create a good medical horror story in general. There has to be a bit of a half-truth behind it, maybe some real-world comparisons that would make you trust this inherently a bit more. It also involves a biology side, because you're not only dealing with disease or health, you're also dealing with an animal that would exist in the world. When you give it something like a life cycle that makes sense from beginning to end, I think that makes it a lot more believable.
Have you yourself ever caught a parasite?
When I was a kid, I had this really common parasite in kids, like tiny little worms that come out in your poop. I'm sorry if that's TMI. Pretty common in kids. You need to take like anti-parasites for it. And they grossed me out so much.
I like that story.
You ever had those? They're like, a lot of kids have these.
I didn't get those, but I did when I was also a child, similar, where they didn't come out in my poop, but they lived in my butt. They might have been the same worm. I just might have not shit them out. Yeah, we're ass parasite buddies.
Ass parasite buddies.
It's just like Eskimo buddies, but, you know, you were infected by the same parasite as a child. I noticed that many of these were either based on real parasites or were already real parasites that you adapted to use humans as a host. What's the scariest real-world parasite, in your opinion?
Oh, so many. The fish world and the insect world have the worst parasites, to me, as in the body horror sense. Wasps, parasitoid wasps, are some of the freakiest stuff in the animal kingdom. There's so many of them. They're usually adapted to a very specific species, and they only infect them, so that it's like some sort of creature made specifically to hurt you. And they're parasitoids, not parasites, which is a good distinction. A parasite tries to keep you alive. A parasite is interested in you living as long as possible because it's leeching off your resources. It's not interested in killing you. A parasitoid doesn't care if you die. It actually will probably accelerate that death in order to get more resources out of you. The parasitoid wasps are the most insane one of these. They will inject you with the venom that will paralyze you and then fill you with a bunch of their larvae. They kill things like tarantulas. Like, they kill pretty big things. The larvae will just feast on this poor paralyzed thing that is alive and is sort of awake. It just can't move. So there's a bunch of larvae eating you from the inside out while you're conscious. It's so messed up.
Why do you think nature is so effective at taking advantage of our fears?
We just live in nature not that long ago, evolutionarily. It's all still in our genes in a way. In cases of some people with like arachnophobia, for example, you'll have a tailored fear to this one specific creature because our brain has it innately. So I think our brains still remember a lot of the pains of living in nature and being affected by things like parasites.
If you had to choose one of these parasites to get yourself, which would you pick?
Realistically, maybe the tongue louse, where it's only affecting a part of your body. Cavity weevil, pretty messed up, but you only lose your teeth, right? In a more poetic way, I would choose the brain wasp because at least it just gets to be you. Your brain is still stored in that bug. It'll go off, do its own thing. Can't imagine the conscious experience of the wasp itself, because as it's eaten your brain and imitated it, it's creating sort of a copy of your consciousness, which then becomes a wasp and flies off. What must it feel to this copy of you that still thinks it's a human to suddenly burst out of your own head and be a wasp just flying around? It must be so scary.
Fuck, I never thought of it like that. You just still think you're Eduardo, but you're a wasp and you're flying around. You're like, what is this is a weird day. So if you had to choose one of these parasites that you'd least like to catch yourself, which would you pick?
I would say the leechweed. There's this horrible thing growing and taking root under your skin. Pretty much no way to remove it because it's so entangled with you. You can't do anything about it. At least it's pretty, so we'll give it that.
What's the funniest, strangest, or most notable response you've ever gotten to your work featuring parasites?
We've mentioned this, but I know that there's some people that are into the devil mask and the whole laying eggs thing. It's a whole like fetish, right? Like alien egg type of stuff. It's reached some people that like it. I've avoided engaging with that.
Is there rule 34 of this?
I don't think so. If there is, I hope I never see it.
Guys, don't send it to him. Don't do it.
Do not DM me rule
Don't do
34
it, guys.
of devil mask, please.
Is there any parasite that you're planning for the future that you're particularly excited about releasing on the populace?
There's one I recently did. I don't know if you've seen it. The jellyfish that live in your eyeball.
Oh yeah, I did see that. He's right in my eyeball.
Another eyeball horror one. And there's the one I just did. And it's a parasite thing I've been most excited about in a while. It's the parasitic encephalization theory.
Oh, the brain?
Yeah, the brain that escapes. Someone sent me this weird like fringe theory that basically says that the brain is sort of a parasite, not in name, not like literally, but in the way it acts in the body. It takes control of the resources of the body. It can reroute nutrients and stuff to itself rather than the rest. It's sort of selfish in many ways. It's also like separate from the immune system. It has its own protective cover. It kind of acts like a parasite that wants to control you and also take all the resources away from you, which I found really interesting. I said, let me think of a literal way of making this a reality. Thinking back to the earliest ancestors of every vertebrate, the chordates more specifically. So every animal that has a spinal cord, and the earliest chordates just had a very simple like string of nerves going down their back, which became the spinal cord through evolution. But they were just like very simple creatures where the larvae had this, and then they would just become sponge-looking things. But that's our ancestors. What if the spinal cord itself was a parasite that got into this very early ancestor and just started controlling it from the inside, and they got so tied together that you can't separate them, essentially? I thought, what's a good way of representing that with an image? It's the brain and spine escaping from a dead person, flailing reflex stuff like, oh, I need to find a new host because it still has this like ancient reflex in it. I've done so many parasites. What if we are the parasites? You are the parasite and the host is the rest of the meat in your body. Maybe the parasites were the friends we made along the way. Folks, stay critical on the internet. I'm saying this as a person who professionally lies online. People will lie to you online. So if you see something, take a second, think, okay, is this realistic? Especially in the age of AI, if you see something that you doubt, try Googling it. Don't believe the Google AI answers. Now I'll tell you about a lot of bullshit. Critically investigate it a little bit.
You heard it here first, folks. Everything you see is true.
I got an image I made that you can show in this part. It's a whole story where I was scam baiting some guy. I got this scam message on Tumblr. I get this guy who's like trying to buy the rights to my images to sell to companies. I asked examples of companies and he said Samsung, Oxford, like the university, I guess, and iPhones, which is, I guess, a company. iPhone's the company. Anyway, I started messing with the guy. I was like, okay, what kind of images do you want to license for iPhones? I guess he saw one of like the last thing I had posted, which was the hummingbird that drinks your eye fluid. So I guess he just saw a hummingbird while scrolling. I was like, oh, any natural art photographs that you have. So he assumed I was like a bird photographer or something. So I just started sending him examples. Oh, how about this? Like weirder and weirder examples, like the flesh stone. And the guy was like, yeah, I love that. Yeah, I can definitely sell that. I wasn't replying to him for a few days. I was like pestering me. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was on call yesterday. You see, I'm a doctor, so, I was on call, so I have been really busy. Oh, we had this weird case last night. This guy came in and had teeth growing from his bones. Can you believe that? And I sent him the image, and the guy's like, oh my God, that's crazy, all caps. He tries to keep going, like keep the scam going, but I don't let him. Next day, I reply, it was really tragic. He died on the operating table last night. It's like, oh my God, my condolences to the family. I just had him going for quite a while. And I'm like, oh, I don't think I can talk to you right now. I feel a little bit sick. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Talk to me when you can. I replied to him like next day. I made a bespoke edit for the guy of a hand full of teeth growing, like from the outside this time. Like a really gross blackened hand full of teeth growing. I'm like, oh, I don't feel so good, like all mistyped. I'm so sorry. I don't think I can continue this. And I send him this image and he just replies, oh my God. He didn't say anything like until a couple days later. It's like, Eduardo, are you okay?
Imagine if that motherfucker was like, so you can't go to Western Union for me?
You know, generally I feel bad lying to people. With my work, I will let them have the story, but after I'll make sure they know it's not real. If this guy's trying to steal my money, it's a mosquito. You can slap a mosquito. It's trying to steal your blood.
Bigfoot is real.
You gotta show the big ass Bigfoot image I made.
Have you ever seen a parasitic roundworm that masquerades as a fetus in a woman's womb? What about the skeleton of a human being that evolved to resemble a crab? A planet made from living, breathing meat and bone that feeds on other worlds? Or a mosquito-human hybrid capable of controlling people's minds? While this sounds like the rantings of someone on enough acid to make any man see God, it is actually the work of Eduardo Valdés-Hevia, an incredibly talented artist who blends found footage, the paranormal, and alternate history into otherworldly worlds and stories. In this video, we'll be delving into the worlds and exploring these stories, as well as hearing about the pieces from the artist himself. Without further ado, let's journey into the nightmarish alternate dimension that is the VALDEVIA. July 23rd, 2006, when the MV Cougar Ace transport ship capsized, an unidentified liquid leaked into the water. It formed a perfect Mandelbrot's fractal pattern. In the following months, strange fish were reported in the area. September 2006, Hurricane Julia approaches the US East Coast. Its strange fractal patterns and iridescence can't be explained by meteorologists. Organisms put in contact with it would begin developing odd symptoms in the following days. As the fractal spreads throughout the atmosphere, its effects first start to be seen in nature, from plants to flocks of birds. The patterns would infect anything they touched, changing their growth and behavior. The longer the contact, the stronger the effect. December 2006. The first signs of fractal infection appear in humans. Strains of Rothia dentocariosa, bacteria otherwise normal in the mouth biome, start growing in strange patterns. Their rapid spread would prove hard to control with antibiotics. Fractal syndrome is first defined as a new entity by the WHO in 2007. First, symptoms appear in growth areas, such as the skin, nails, and intestinal lining. It slowly spreads to the iris, teeth, and eventually limbs. Transmission occurs through unknown mechanisms. No treatment exists. When the fractal syndrome eventually takes hold in the brain, strange behaviors start to occur. Though the changes are unconscious at first, they are visible when crowds spontaneously form into self-repeating patterns. Children start showing fractal conducts earlier than adults. The fractal communion is established as a major religion in 2007. As their numbers explode in the millions, congregants voluntarily expose themselves to the Hasdorf DF 2.5, the substance causing fractal syndrome. They see it as an elixir capable of miracles, such as curing blindness. July 23rd, 2011, Hasdorf D 2.5. The fractal is released as a vapor over major world cities in synchronized attacks. As it rains down, it coats every surface. The attacks are planned by a radical religious collective known as the Branch. Tens of millions fall to the fractal. As major population centers across the world are affected by the fractal, authorities react by quarantining entire cities to avoid its spread. The struggle escalates into riots and open conflict against government forces. The fractal is being used as a weapon by the besieged fighters. To be continued. Holy shit! Some sort of substance that morphs anything it comes into contact with into a form that repeats infinitely into itself in a perfect fractal pattern. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Let's take some acid and just pour buckets of this crap into the street. This story plays with the idea of fractal infinity, and also humanity's impact on the environment around them. It explores how human impact on the environment has a much more wide-reaching implication than they could ever know. The effects on the environment have infinite spread potential, and go all the way from the largest interconnected system to the smallest singular cell. Like a fractal!
He said it!
The catalyst of the story, the shipwreck, reminds me of the BP oil spill. The results are just as disastrous, just a little bit more Lovecraftian here. As the spill of the fractal chemical seeped into the ocean, it permeated each and every fiber of the life forms around it. The plankton began to develop fractal patterns, as did the fish who eat the plankton, and plants, as do the birds who eat the fish. Through the water, through the air, and through the food chain, this fractal chemistry insidiously worked its way into every fiber of nature until it reached the obvious, logical extreme. Walrus Man! As of December 2006, the fractal pathogen now afflicts bacteria which take root in the human mouth, spreading from that bacterium to the human itself in no time flat. And the plaguey for the fastest zoonotic shift goes too! This created a new disease by the name of fractal syndrome. Fractal syndrome starts in areas like the skin, nails, and testicles, and slowly takes over the entire body. There is no known treatment for this disease, but it also seemingly isn't fatal, like herpes. It does, however, have unparalleled psychological effects. The human brain always does the goofiest shit when you really shake it up good. The syndrome causes people to arrange themselves with others in fractal patterned crowds, continuously acting in repetitive patterned behaviors, and drawing fractals constantly. Eventually, enough people have their brains altered by the fractal syndrome that they begin to develop some sort of groupthink. Fractal syndrome eventually transitioned into the fractal communion, using the very same chemical that started the outbreak as their sacrament, like it's their holy water. Of course, this religion did what every religion does, and they minded their own business without jamming their tenets and practices violently down everyone's throat, until they did not that. So basically, Fract Al-Qaeda made a big old cloud of fractal juice and used it as a bioweapon to convert as much of the world as possible to their religion and body structure. And they all lived happily ever after, unless they happened to not want to be a forever repeating shape. The end. Some of you might be wondering exactly what this fractal chemical is. The Hasdorf D2.5 is a reference to Hasdorf dimensions. This chemical exists in between the second and third dimensions. After making contact with something in the third dimension, it sticks to it, and pulls the third dimensional object along with it between dimensions. The things it touches get fractalized at their natural rate of change. Clouds manifest and disappear rapidly, so it quickly gets turned into fractal shapes. A human would get fractalized over years. This means that because children have faster growth rates, they would fractalize faster. This is why the Earth itself looks relatively unaffected, as a mountain would turn into a fractal over millions of years. Real talk though, I love how this work uses so many disparate elements of cycles and combines them to show how easily things can get out of hand. The fractal is a perfect symbol for forever repeating intensifying cycles, as that's exactly what a fractal is. Hence, it can be used to perfectly symbolize, the layers of damage humans can do to the environment without even realizing it by taking action on what looks like the surface levels. Or the functions of an ecosystem and how overlapping systems are actually interconnected on scales of size and intricacies. Or maybe the gradual morphing of a religion intended to bring people together based on sameness, and how that's actually the same as dividing other groups based on difference. Or some random goofy examples like that. I don't know. I'm a firm believer that explaining a concept is like dissecting a frog. You understand it better, but it dies in the process. Even though I'm butchering Eduardo's symbolism with my words, I feel as though the message of this story still shows through. You never know how far one teeny tiny catastrophic oil spill can go. TLDR, even the smallest of actions can have far-reaching consequences, like when a butterfly flaps its wings. And you're gay now. What would you say would your inspiration behind fractals be?
Fractals also, like the first part was also born of one of these prompt challenges. If I recall correctly, the prompt was like Mandelbrot's leak. So I was like, wouldn't it be fun if like there was something came out of the, like something was spilled into the ocean and then the fish started turning into Mandelbrots too. Didn't think that much more about it. Then like I think a year later, I had recently read Uzumaki. Uzumaki is like this town gets taken over by the idea of a spiral. And I love that story. Like it's one of my favorite, it's my favorite manga and one of my favorite Junji Ito things. I was like, what if we took this fractal contagion idea and this idea of Uzumaki, which is Uzumaki's kind of an apocalyptic story, even though it's like only one town. you know, it has all the structure of an apocalypse story. What if I took those two things and mixed them together, had the fractal take over, but like at a global scale? It just takes over the world, and it can act as a cool metaphor for like a pandemic, which back when I was making that, we were living through like a more active phase of it. It can act as like a commentary on like humans and nature, because fractal kind of in a way represents like nature getting revenge in a way as for what humans have done to it. An interesting thing that I've listened to Mandelbrot himself do a talk on fractals before he passed away, and he mentioned something really interesting, that is, there's something you can calculate called the fractal dimension. An object can be in 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, but they can be in fractal dimensions where they're not quite one or the other. If you draw the Sierpinski triangles, they have 0 area because they can it just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So the area becomes 0, but like if you draw the perimeter, it becomes infinite. It's like, is it a 1-dimensional object even though it looks 2-dimensional? No. Is it 2-dimensional? No, it doesn't have any area. It's just like a weird squiggly line. All this to say that things in nature, as Mandelbrot himself explains, are way more fractal than things that humanity makes. I don't know. I just really like that concept, and the concept of like, oh, the fractal is nature. It'll eventually like destroy humanity, and nature will just adapt to it and keep living, while we won't, because we weren't able to adapt.
Like, let's say this was a real thing. How long until there's the fractal fetish?
Pretty much immediately with some people. If it takes over your brain and makes you obsessed with fractals, I think it would probably be like an obvious stepping stone into between when people start getting infected and when they go completely mad.
I just imagined a fractalized penis. Is that going to be in the next installment, please?
only for the Patreons. Getting an OnlyFans only for that.
A skeleton recovered from the Leyland-Chon experiments on human evolution. In these tests, volunteers were subjected to procedures to accelerate the development of mankind. No subject is recorded to have survived. Their crab-like form is thought to be an instance of carcinization.
Yup, that's me. Evolved into some sort of crab man, died, and then put on display in a children's museum. You're probably wondering how I got here. Well, it all started with a team of scientists.
These scientists wanted to create the most advanced human specimen known to mankind.
They thought that since evolution led to the rise of human intelligence, that if the process were accelerated, it would eventually create the ultimate specimen representing the pinnacle of human advancement.
Stronger, faster, and of course, more intelligent, with a brain more powerful than any living Homo sapien. So unfathomably pure that they would have to be classified as a new species.
One look at Krabby, and you can see that they were only right about the new species part. While these scientists were seemingly smart enough to invent a machine that accelerates evolution, they weren't smart enough to understand the mechanisms behind evolution in the first place. Evolution is not a system that has some sort of start and end. It also doesn't really have a goal in mind. It's just doing trial and error. The organisms who gain the advantageous adaptations survive over the organisms that gain the stupid ones. Different adaptations will be more or less useful or detrimental in different environments. Organisms gain these adaptations via mutation and are filtered out with natural selection. And the less successful organisms get to be food for the more successful organisms. So everyone gets to participate. The key here is the environment. Case in point, lungs are great for breathing air, not for breathing water. Since humans change the environment around them rather than just having more kids until they die less immediately, they've seemingly removed themselves from the selective pressures of evolution. Now, I know what you're thinking. How the fuck does that add up to crab?
Hey, get that camera out of my face.
And I got a theory about that too. Evolutionary biologist L.A. Borradale coined the term carcinization in 1916 to describe the convergent evolution process in which a crustacean evolves into a crab-like form from a non-crab-like form. He didn't just coin this incredibly stupid process for no reason. It's actually very common. There are two schools of thought as to why everything always turns into crab. It turns out, hilariously,
ultimately that the most efficient and adaptable body plan is the crab. And therefore, if given enough time, any being will eventually evolve into it. I don't know, maybe being crab is fun. Don't knock it till you try it. A machine such as the one needed to accelerate evolution would likely just accelerate mutations. Large-scale mutations in one generation would lead to unstable organisms. These organisms may have organs or limbs that cannot function properly, making them future dog food, to use the scientific term. But there's likely one form hardy and adaptable enough to survive for just a little bit, even with a bunch of mutant tumors in its body, the crab. Being the most adaptable body plan, an organism that somehow survived having its evolution accelerated would come to resemble a hybrid of their former physiology and a crab. While the crab is undeniably the most effective body plan, a bipedal mammalian body would have to go through a complete restructuring to even slightly resemble one. For one, humans have 4 limbs, and most crabs have 10. To have a gait at all similar to crabs, we would need to have 3 limbs used as legs, and 1 used as a pincer. This would result in a hilariously clumsy tripod style of walking. Evolution can't magically make us sprout new limbs, so only 1 arm would be available to be turned into a pincer. This gives the crab man a strange, asymmetrical appearance. The shell is quite similar to a turtle's, essentially being a modified ribcage that the head and neck receded into. The bones in the man's face have cracked and reshaped to resemble the jaws of a crab. Finally, one of the hands lost all but 2 fingers, and its nails grew longer and sharper to resemble pincers. This structure is made of keratin, like a cow's horn. Hence, the longer the crab man lives, the longer his pincer is. While this might seem cool, it essentially means he's in gross hobo mode and never trims his nails. Pro tip, you can bite off your nails and eat them so you don't have to cut them. While the initial report states there were no survivors, this is humans we're talking about. Of course they're lying. Multiple of these organisms actually did survive, but only the ones that most heavily came to resemble crabs. The scientists were shocked and horrified at the results of their experiments. The crabmen were also notably not more intelligent, but less so. In fact, they seemingly lost most of their humanity, and their behavior became much more crab-like. One of the most notable changes to their behavior was their eating habits. For those who don't know, crabs are often scavengers. The quote-unquote hyper-evolved humans became less discerning when it came to what they ate. Whereas before, they had what could be called a regular human diet consisting solely of McDonald's and beer or some shit. They upgraded to consuming actual trash and their own and other individuals' feces. The crab people also became notably more aggressive, attempting to kill and consume whatever is in front of them, especially other crab people. The strangest behavior displayed by these crab people was not crab-like in nature, but instead revealed a fraction of the humanity they had left. The scientists found this out when they took little precaution with interacting with them. They thought that a being more evolved would be more intelligent and moral. Thing is, evolution doesn't breed, intellectually stimulating friends. It breeds killing machines. The crab people pursued the scientists relentlessly, and then the scientists that didn't immediately Kermit sewer slide upon seeing what they had done were dispatched and consumed by the crabmen. Although, they did it with tears streaming down their heavily mutated faces, and they all lived happily ever after. The end. This story cements once and for all that the pinnacle of evolution is not in fact human, but crab. Remember folks, next time someone gets mad at you for giving them crabs, tell them that they should thank you for making them more evolved. I know you still watch my videos, you can't be mad at me. What was your inspiration for the crabman skeleton?
Just the concept of carcinization. A lot of things were done for like little challenges, like little prompt-based challenges. So sometimes I'll just take, I think the prompt was called Advanced Evolution or something like that. I was like, okay, let me take this prompt. What could I do with it? And I figured, oh, wouldn't it be fun if there was like an experiment that tried to advance the evolution of humans, which is bullshit. Like that evolution doesn't work like that. But like this is like in this magic place where this can happen. Wouldn't it be fun if they found out that humans evolved into crabs? Then I was like, okay, this is fun. I want to do some like more speculative biology on it. So what would a human that evolved into a crab look like, just through the skeleton initially? Then I did another photo of it where it's alive, but what would it look like? So its rib cage, like a turtle, would have to like form the shell, and then the face would need to like just like get inside the rib cage essentially. Crabs are working with a lot more limbs than us, and it's not really like practical like evolution wise. We're tetrapods, we can't develop new limbs. That would be like evolutionarily impossible. Only one limb could be the pincers. They would be basically standing on 3 legs and 1 pincer.
There's a lot of what if, and it kind of blends in certain aspects horror and comedy. And this is one example where it's like, it's definitely horrific, but it's also kind of hilarious to think about the Crabman. Yeah. How would you say that this piece shows your inclination towards horror comedy?
That's something I've noticed, like as I develop an image, it's really easy to tip it into the absurd or horror. Like just with very small changes. So it makes me really aware that horror and like absurd comedy are kind of like 2 faces of the same coin. And it's really easy to go one way or the other. And it's really hard to do both at the same time. Like sometimes, like, you know, that thin line where it's like both a horrifying concept and also really funny it's hard to get, but it's great. I love when I get that.
So what, you think crabs are like better than people or something?
Yeah, obviously. They have a compact shape, really hard to eat, really efficient. They can walk sideways to escape dangers super fast. They have pincers to defend themselves. You know, like, we don't need intelligence.
I'd argue that most humans don't have it, but yeah.
You can just, like, they have happy lives just being on the shore and eating just whatever detritus they find there. Isn't that a beautiful life?
Dracunculus graviditatis is a specialized parasite of the uterus, infesting various species of mammal, including humans. Microscopic copepods living in untreated water may carry this nematode's larvae, which, when ingested, break through the intestinal lining and migrate to the uterine wall. Once settled, they create a membrane around themselves, fusing to the uterine tissue and releasing anandamide and HCG analogs. This tricks the body into starting a false pregnancy process, which the roundworm uses to feed and grow up to lengths of 2 meters. Removal of the parasite and its pseudoamniotic sac must be precise, as breaking it will release a large amount of antigens, which may cause anaphylactic shock to the host.
Push, honey, push! Congratulations, it's a worm!
I knew you weren't composting, you bitch! Holy pregnant lady worm sack! A totally real, not at all fake, parasitic nematode that infiltrates all mammalian reproductive system through consumption of dirty bug water, then embeds itself in the uterus, becoming a fake baby and signaling the woman's body to feed and nurture it until it is fully grown.
I know you were telling me she ain't it and it'd be opening a can of worms, but I didn't know you meant it literally.
Never got that saying, by the way. If there was a can labeled worms, I would open it immediately out of curiosity. Regardless, let's break down what we know about the womb worm that I would never lie to you about being real. This parasite feeds on all mammals, but the only ones smart enough to detect and be afraid of it are humans.
Infection goes a little something like this.
When a mommy human and a daddy glass of water containing a worm-infested copepod love each other very much, the mommy drinks the daddy glass of water containing a worm-infested copepod. The copepod then dies by vor, and the worm is released into the intestines, subsequently burrowing into the woman's guts to get to the uterus, but not in the fun way. From here, the womb worm creates a membrane around itself, which allows it to fuse to the woman's uterine lining. It then mimics the hormonal and physical triggers of pregnancy, causing the woman's body to begin treating the worm like her baby, feeding it, nurturing it, allowing it to grow into a writhing, twisted, slithering mass. The worm is even well adapted to humanity's external intervention. As if the sac is popped, the worm releases antigens, or a foreign substance that elicits an immune response from the body, in this case leading to anaphylactic shock. Many other non-anomalous nematodes in the same family have evolved the same adaptation, and it's possible that they evolved this in order to dissuade hosts from removing their new skin roommates. Speaking of the family the worm comes from, understanding another member of said family may show us a bit more about our false fetus friend here. The guinea worm is another parasitic worm that feeds off humans in a similar, very disturbing, but in my opinion, slightly less disturbing manner. The beginning stage of the life cycle in the guinea worm is exactly the same as the womb worm. Both are spread via drinking unfiltered stagnant water containing copepods. From there, they both feed on the host, just via different metrics. People don't usually show symptoms of guinea worm until around a year after infection. But at the end of its life, the worm has developed a ghastly way of leaving its host. The infected develop a fever, swelling, and a pain in the area the worm resides in. The worm then bursts out from the skin of the victim, slowly wriggling its way out, causing a searing pain for the host. More than 90% of worms come out of the legs and feet, but worms can appear on other parts of the body too. If the end of the life cycle of the guinea worm is at all similar to that of the womb worm, that's what we call in the medical field fucking terrifying. The strategy of the womb worm is also reminiscent of another evolutionary strategy, parasitoid castration. In this strategy, a parasite ends the reproductive life of its host, aka makes it unable to boink and make another one of itself. This theoretically frees a significant portion of the host's resources, which can now be used to benefit the parasite. These resources include not only just naughty bits, but also the energy spent on mate-seeking behavior and caring for offspring. While this isn't exactly the same as that strategy, one can see very obvious direct parallels to it in the way that the womb worm siphons resources and prevents any actual pregnancy from happening. And also, because they're both fucking horrifying. One question I have is, does carrying the worm affect the woman psychologically? I hope that current human ideologies haven't rotted your brains to the point that people will get mad at me for saying that growing another fucking human being inside of you affects your mind. All I'm saying is, she wasn't dipping pickles in ice cream before y'all forgot the condom, so maybe if she won't stop eating mulch out of the garden, it's time to be a caring partner and ask about that? More concerning, I theorize that after beginning the term of carrying the womb worm, the woman may begin to think of the nematode as her child, fixating on it constantly, protecting it from any harm, especially avoiding doctors who may remove it. This all begs the question, what happens when the worm comes to term, so to speak? That brings us to my next speculation. It appears that there are several small masses in the sac with the worm. While these could just be its poops, I have a theory that these are eggs. If the worm reproduces inside of its host, it stands to reason that the worm would want to spread its eggs. At this point, one of a few things could happen. It's possible that the worm would just sap the woman's body of nutrients until she died, and the worms would eat their way out. It's also possible that if it could affect their mind by some mechanic, it would influence her to play out the next phase of the worm's life cycle, leading the woman to a body of water, allowing the next generation of worms to escape and find copepods to infest. Starting the cycle all over again.
Nature is just so beautiful sometimes. I mean, not right now. This makes me want to give myself an impromptu vasectomy with toenail trimmers, but I don't know, bite into a cactus or something.
My theory may seem far-fetched, but this style of reproduction is not unfounded in the animal kingdom. One parasite, the horsehair worm, has this exact method of reproduction, infecting a cricket and then making it drown itself because that's the only way it can find someone else to have sex with. Next time you think finding someone is hard, just be thankful that you don't have to live inside someone else for years only to make them off themselves in a blow-up kiddie pool just to get a chance to get laid. If you have an opinion or speculation on my worm theory, or just womb worms in general, make sure to comment below. My opinion is that I'm glad it's only transmitted through drinking dirty water, because upon seeing the images, my mind initially created an implication about how that worm got in there that unsettled me to my core.
What was your inspiration behind the womb worm?
Obviously, I'm not someone who can get pregnant, but I just find the idea of pregnancy close to body horror in many ways. Like, the body changes in so many ways and can sometimes like literally get lifelong effects from it. In real life, it's one of the closest equivalents we have to body horror, but it's so normal, right? We don't really think about it. If we remove the human bit from it and we have just something creating a false pregnancy, like a parasite kid creating a false pregnancy, to just keep the body horror aspects while removing all the rest. And I think that just like emphasizes how much body horror like pregnancy can be.
Is this going to be something that would become a series?
I think it's better to keep it as a one-off for this one. The problem is, like, how does this worm get out? That's one of the obvious questions, right? If I were to represent that, it would be either like way too much into gore or NSFW, like stuff that I wouldn't really do.
If you, okay, how do I phrase this? In a world where never went to the doctor during the pregnancy, you go and it's during the delivery, everything's going normal, and then boom, worms. You think it's gonna be a baby,
It's worms. Do you keep it?
I think, unfortunately, the worm wouldn't really live for long outside. To this womb worm, the only important thing would be getting the eggs out. That's the next part of its life cycle. Whatever happens to the worm doesn't matter. It would probably not live for long. I don't think even its mouth would be adapted to like eating stuff outside. Its mouth would probably just be like hyper adapted to just attaching to this fake placenta and drinking from it, right? So it probably wouldn't be able to even feed outside. It would probably just prepare a bunch of eggs, and the moment it came out, it's just like egg explosion, and hoping that some of those eggs find their way to water to continue the life cycle. So, unfortunately, I don't think we'd be able to keep the worm.
I would just keep it in like a jar, but that's a good point. The Mermaids of River John, 1918. This town in Nova Scotia has seen many stories of animals described as mermaids over the years. This picture caused a lot of debate, and although many dismissed it as a hoax, some believe it to be real. A picture from the same area in 1922 shows another strange shape below the water. Critics claim it was just a small whale. The North Atlantic Mermaids, 2016. The controversial image was taken by a pair of divers as they approached a pod of what they described as mermaids. Some have claimed this as evidence of an undiscovered cetacean species. The Mermaid Fall, 2019. This cetacean carcass was found during a seafloor expedition near Puerto Rico. Some have called it a mermaid owing to its strikingly humanoid features, but biologists claimed its heavily decomposed state cannot offer a positive identification.
Well, mermaids are real. Who knew except all of humanity for literally the entire amount of time you shitheads could document things? Let's go over what we know. First of all, these mermaids are notably different from many other mermaids of lore. Rather than being half beautiful woman and half fish or some sort of weird eel man, these mermaids are massive in scale, looking more along the lines of a whale-human hybrid than a fish-human hybrid. While a popular explanation for these creatures was that early humans, or some sort of human ancestor, went into the ocean for one reason or another, probably resources, and slowly evolved into dolphin people, as displayed by this dumbass Animal Planet CGI documentary, upon further investigation, this does not appear to be the case. DNA analysis of the parts of the corpse that we did not eat proved that the quote-unquote mermaids are actually a species of yet unidentified cetaceans, the same family that includes dolphins and whales. Though these creatures are related to whales, through convergent evolution, they have evolved more human-like characteristics. To be able to hunt more effectively and use tools, they've traded their front flippers for hands. The ability to skillfully manipulate the environment could prove very useful in the ocean. For one, the amount of foods that require either great force or great thought to extract from their shells/skeletons/houses down here are vast. And said skeleton houses are made from calcium, which is a prime material to be reshaped into tools. Maybe. I don't know. Don't Google it. I at least know it would be a lot harder for a regular whale to jerk off. While the facial structure in the skull and the grabbers on the end of their arms suggest a relation to humanity, these creatures are actually genetically much closer to deer than to people. Not that there's really much of a difference in my eye. Both look the same in headlights. Moving on, looking at their skull structure, it looks strikingly humanoid, with roughly the same dentition as a human as well, suggesting that they've maintained an omnivorous diet. Not only this, but it looks as though their head is structured to allow for a large brain. How smart these things are is a mystery, but if they can use tools and avoid human cameras for decades, chances are they got a lot of wrinkles in their head meatballs. I hear what you're saying. Wait, so sea people just evolved completely separately from land people and somehow have identical front limb and skull structure and are even similar enough to have human-like tits? Yep, you're not nearly as special as you once thought. Weird how that keeps happening. These creatures are around 6 to 7 human wingspans long from head to tail, and chances are they can get much longer. I bet you're wondering how the hell these fat asses stayed hidden for so long despite their size. Chances are, these creatures, with their higher intelligence, noticed the trouble that humanity usually causes. A smart being would likely vacate whatever area is heavily trafficked by the animal kingdom's version of a serial killer, so the sea people would vacate the surface whenever humans were around, diving incredibly deep to avoid the fates that many species of whale and large sea life suffered. I mean, if I were them, I would run from you guys too. I saw what you turned wolves into.
Humans and cetaceans are among the most intelligent organisms on the planet, so chances are, these mermaids are pretty smart too. We can gauge from one of the images that they display social behavior, traveling in groups. The term would be pods if we considered them whales, and angry mob if we considered them human. The evolution of grasping hands leads one to believe that these cetaceans were using tools. These traits show advanced intelligence, and if they're intelligent enough to develop tools and live in large social groups, they might be intelligent enough to form some semblance of a society. It's possible that they could have an even more advanced society than humanity. I can already hear you whining.
How would they develop advanced technology without the energy given by fire? Ooh.
And first of all, you've been complaining a lot this episode, so fucking quit it. And second, ever hear of a hydrothermal vent? Well, if not, they're like little volcanoes, but under the water. They get pretty damn hot and put off a lot of chemical energy too. I bet there's a way to put those pieces together, so just because you're too dumb to figure it out doesn't mean the mermaids are. The ocean covers 71% of the Earth's surface, and 50 to 80% of all life is found under the waves. How well do you really know what you're swimming with? Or worse, what's below you? What was the inspiration behind the Mermaid series?
So that was just another one where I was like, I want to do a take on a classic creature. I really love doing this like speculative biology thing where you allow yourself to take like a little like stuff that can't happen, a little bit of magic, but then like try to be realistic with what those assumptions. Like, oh, humans obviously wouldn't evolve into crabs, but if they did, what would happen, right? So if mermaids were real, what would they look like realistically? And my idea was, they wouldn't be like half fish, half people. Taxonomically, that makes no sense from the like tree of life point of view, right? Like fish and human is so far away. So I figured it would definitely be a cetacean. It would definitely be a type of whale that just, instead of evolving fins, because, you know, of the fins, the front fins of a whale is the same bones as our hands, just like in a different order. So what if you took those bones and elongated them back into like a long limb and had like a hand at the end? And what if you like had a much smaller head? You can have hair because, you know, whales are descended from a type of deer. They still have the genes in there to make hair. So you can have like a long flowing mane type thing. And just through these adaptations that are a lot more plausible, you get to something that's closer and closer to a human. But that still keeps like a lot of whale characteristics. I'm sorry about this, and but I will not stop doing it. I love to kill folklore creatures. I wanted to do like, what if a mermaid just washed up on shore? So I combined those two ideas. I was like, obviously there's a lot of whales that wash up on shore. I looked for images of that, and then just like edited the whale into a mermaid-like thing.
Do you have anything to say to the people at Animal Planet who made that documentary?
I like that documentary. I think just the idea of it airing on a channel about animals and stuff is not the right way to do it, because most people will just tune in after the disclaimer that says this is fiction and just kind of go with it, you know, and kind of believe it. Stylistically, they did really well. Like, they do the same kind of stuff I do. They kind of fail on the disclosure part of it, where they have to be a little more clear that this is fiction. So just in case someone believes it. I did like that.
November 15th, 2021. A new dwarf planet has been discovered in our solar neighborhood. It was given the provisional name xipe totec. It has gone unnoticed due to its small size and complex orbit, but it recently passed close enough for the first image to be captured. August 7th, 2022. Xipe totec has completed an unexpectedly close orbit of the Earth, grazing its Roche radius. Tidal waves are expected in the coming days. Authorities are warning not to approach the falling debris that was torn from the planet by Earth's gravity. May 30th, 2023. Concerns are mounting worldwide as flesh organisms grow unchecked. Seeds that fell on Earth during a close encounter with the living planetoid xipe totec appear to be fusing and consuming everything around them. Large swaths of the ocean floor being covered in flesh may lead to an ecological disaster, warns biologists. Breaking. We have lost connection with the James Webb Telescope. Its final message contains the last 4 images it captured before losing signal. New data received from the spacecraft Voyager 2. Its trajectory was disturbed by a moon-sized object outside the solar system. The probe took this photograph of it. It appears to be the organic husk of a member of xipe totec species that did not survive its interstellar trip.
Holy shit! An entirely new species of animal-like organisms that's the size of an entire planet, approaching humanity's home at a great speed, and subsequently pollinating the surface of the Earth with ever-growing and fusing flesh seeds. I guess space is just another ecosystem now, and also it ate the James Webb Telescope. This obviously raises a lot of questions. For example, is making little seemingly sentient babies and throwing them point-blank at Earth considered child abuse or sexual assault? What about both?
That's not what I meant.
One very pressing question I have is, what the hell is this sentient meatball, and what's it doing? Some of the smart viewers might have figured it out already, but I believe we can get a better understanding of this big old boy by looking at the media that may have inspired it. This story has many parallels to another masterpiece by the name of Hellstar Ramina, written by one Junji Ito. For those uncultured, slack-jawed dumb fucks that are unfamiliar with Hellstar Ramina, it goes a little something like this. One day, every human on Earth is doing normal human things, like eating processed cheese and penetrating each other and expelling said processed cheese, when all of a sudden, they see another celestial body approaching their home planet of Earth. Eventually, they realize that this planet has a giant mouth, and when it gets to them, it slowly begins devouring Earth until it's all gone, cleaning its plate like a very good boy, and then they all lived happily ever after, unless they happen to not be a monster planet. The end. While the original concept of Hellstar Ramina was to make the reader question everything they knew about the universe, like how planets usually aren't animals that run around consuming each other like the galaxy was the goddamn Serengeti, xipe totec seems to be more interested in explaining the nature of how creature planets would work, and I believe I understand the life cycle of this fascinating new little critter you got here. Well, I don't know if I believe it, but I sure as hell can make it up from source material and evidence. This planet starts as tiny pimple-like spores that branch off from the larger planet. It waits on the surface of its mama, loosely attached to each other by a thin, fragile membrane. When the mother xipe totec specimen gets close enough to a target planet to be affected by its gravity, the resulting force eventually pulls hard enough to separate the spores from their membranes. Some of these spores end up making their way to the target planet in question, and the spores begin to colonize it.
They grow up so fast.
As all creatures do, the spores begin to convert environmental biomass into their own bodies. However, unlike Earth life, these meat blobs all work together in attempts to convert the entire planet into iterations of themselves. You could learn a thing or two from these giant cancer cells, I tell ya. Eventually, these blobs replace the entirety of biological life on the surface, and combine to form one massive singular organism, with each meaty blob acting like an individual cell. These meat blobs act more specifically like stem cells, and begin to diversify into organs, veins, muscles, balls, whatever pieces a complete animal may need. Neat, right? Well, it's a glimpse into your future, so not really neat for you. Nature is just so beautiful sometimes. I mean, not right now. I'm struggling to think of anything more horrible. I don't know, hug the nearest raccoon. This stage of its life is completed when there's no more local biomass left on the planet. It then slowly starves while looking for a new victim, nursery planet for the next generation of space meatballs. It ends its life as many organisms do. The noble skeleton. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
To a fish, the ocean is the world. To an ant, the forest is the world. To a bacterium, the skin around your rectum is the world. This work really makes you question your place in the universe, doesn't it? I mean, it makes you question. I know where I stand, cell phone ape. What would you say your inspiration behind xipe totec was?
There's a bit of Hellstar Ramina, especially later on, because at the time I first did the first part, I hadn't read Hellstar Ramina, so I wasn't aware that Junji Ito had tackled the concept before. But, you know, like retroactively, yeah, there is inspiration there. I've always liked enormous things, just like, you know, megalophobia, things that are just impossibly large. And yeah, just like, oh, what if there was a creature that was like an entire planet? At first, it was just this one-off piece. I really liked it. People really loved it. I think it was like one day on stream, we were saying like, what would happen if we like tried to continue the story and maybe the planet came to visit us because it wanted to like create a new meat planet. It's like spreading itself. It's like its way of reproducing or multiplying. So I kind of went with that and it's like, oh, now it's an apocalypse story. Hell yeah, let's go with it. Like there's walls of flesh invading the earth. Why not? It's not gonna be a super long one. From what we've seen so far, we've seen it put its seeds on the earth, they start growing, they take over the oceans, and then they come onto land and people start like try to use fire to stop it. They can't. Humanity, like a futile attempt at stopping what a literal like cosmic destruction event. So we're gonna see that develop until its inevitable end of now the Earth is the new meat planets. I'm sorry if that's spoilers, but that's I think that was a pretty obvious conclusion.
All right, that segues good into the capstone for this one, which is if this happened, what would you do?
I would just let myself be swallowed into the flesh. It's better than dying of hunger because you're in a bunker underground and you can't even get out because you're surrounded by walls of flesh all over, and you probably can't eat it because our stomach acid is probably not enough to kill it, or whatever fire we can do. It's not enough to burn it all the way through, so it's gonna like reactivate in your stomach and eat you from the inside. There's probably like millions of years into the future, whatever life survived on Totec probably became like, we'd probably end up becoming a sort of like parasitic ecosystem where you have like some kind of parasite that just like latches onto them, acting like plants, and then like other animals just running around eating these, like creating a whole ecosystem. I think that might be a fun thing to do, like maybe in the future.
(1849). Last page of Renard de Savinge's notes. Years ago, I found the shifting skull while exploring the Paris catacombs. I have studied its mysteries since. How does it keep transforming? Is it alive? The answers must lie in the marrow. For this experiment, I will break it. 1865. A photographer reveals his latest invention to the French emperor's court. The portrait tournant. One of the portraits shows Baron Renard of Savinge. It was deemed defective. Unbeknownst to them, the one in the photograph was not Renard. The facade disappeared in 1895. 1896. During the X-ray craze, people buy machines to show the strange radiation to party guests. In one such event, in Hamburg, financier Franz Mansfield has his plate taken, revealing him to be the facade. He kept the print a secret until he vanished during a trip to the Americas. The location of the facade from 1917 to 1960 is unknown, but a string of unsolved disappearances throughout the United States point to it changing forms in a quick succession. 1960, a 6-year-old kid in Chicago is admitted to the Lurie Children's Hospital after a panic attack. She claims there is a monster pretending to be her mother. Her records show another panic attack at age 23, thought to be at the time when the facade chose a new victim. 1977, a report to the Chicago PD.
I swear he ate her. They were fighting, she lunged at him, it was a blur, and then she was gone. There he was, swollen, down on the floor, his face shifting.
The report was not investigated. The facade's current location is unknown.
Yeah, damn! Some sort of shape-shifting being that disguises itself as members of humanity by jumping inside of them and then morphing into them only to skip town and disguise as someone else the moment it's discovered. This is a lot of information, so to help your smooth human brain to understand, let's go through the situation the evidence presents step by step. Our story starts in 1849, when a researcher finds a skull while exploring the Paris catacombs. The skull is warped and distorted. Not only that, but it appears that the shape of the skull continues to grow and change, almost like it's still alive. The researcher claims that he will attempt to break the marrow to see how the skull functions. But we never learn if he had any findings, because he's bad at following through on his promises because he's the facade now. Following this, the facade, disguising as Renard because it jumped inside his body,
is documented in France when a photographer uses what looks like a combination of a lazy Susan and an old-fashioned camera to reveal that half of this guy's face is a hideous chicken monster. That was uncalled for. 30 years later, the facade disappeared. And then 1 year after that, the creature reappears in Hamburg, Germany. The facade, now disguised as one Franz Mansfield, has his X-ray plate taken at a party. Weird. Humans nowadays normally just drink fun poison at parties. This X-ray plate reveals his weird shifty skull, which seemingly makes him self-conscious because he kept the plate a secret, and then a little while later, skipped town again. No one knew exactly where the facade went, but in this time, a string of disappearances in the US pointed to traveling incognito through America. The land of opportunity. Wait, sorry, so that's a typo. The land of obesity. In 1960, the facade reappeared, this time in Chicago. Well, if that kid isn't full of shit, which kids typically are, but this has too much supporting evidence, so I guess not. Side note, I like how in this universe, Chicago's 100% murder rate can just be explained by the facade. After this, the monster mommy must have noticed that the kid was horrified of her, and she jumped ship again. Now, what did we learn from all this? That's right. If you're going to be a disguising predatory monster, pick your targets carefully and avoid detection. Now that I've explained this to you with the subtlety and nuance of a crazed man pressing his dick against a high-floor balcony glass, let's get into the questions this story raises. First of all, what the hell are the facade? The facade is a being that changes bodies not by eating them, but by getting eaten. The scene described in the Chicago PD call is the facade posing as that child's mother before jumping into its next victim. Through biological mimicry, or some sort of cognitohazardous interference, it seems to fool everyone the victim knows, with the exception being children, or at least that stupid one. After this, it appears that the facade seems to go about the daily life of the victim. It's the simple things in life that give the facade joy. This leaves one question unanswered. What is this creature's motivation? While one would be quick to point out that it does in fact, in a way, predate on people, it only does that to get rid of them and subsequently take their form. It hasn't shown any evidence of attacking anyone else once it's already assimilated, so it doesn't appear to be taking the people for the nutrients, nor the fun of it, but solely to replace them. It doesn't seem to be hurting anyone else. So, what the hell could it possibly want? I think that this part of the story is where the Lovecraftian magic really starts to settle in. Sure, it would be hella spooky if we were told exactly what the plans were for this little creature's dastardly deeds. But I think it's even scarier if it's left unknown, and our minds are left to run wild with its possibilities. Is it ingratiating itself into family units to more effectively understand human psychology and biology? It could even be studying our habits in order to create some sort of super product to sell back to us with a multi-level marketing scheme to keep us all enslaved as both producer and consumer. No, wait. It can't be. It can't be. It's back. Just in a different form. Why must you take everything from us? Away with you, Spectre! Away with you! The current location of the Herbalife CEO is unknown. But you know what that means. It means that someone is probably gonna be swallowed and replaced soon.
What is the inspiration behind the facade?
So it was just a conversation I had with Luke. We wanted to collaborate on something, and we were trying to think like, what would be a fun topic to tackle? And something I'd like to do, especially with collaborations, is like, let's take a classic monster and just do our own take on it. It doesn't have to be like a super fancy twist, just like a different take. Like the Lycanthrope series was, we're gonna take werewolves and vampires and invert their roles. Like, the werewolf is now like the aristocrats metaphor, right? I was thinking like something similar, but I wanted to do doppelgangers. I really liked Luke's style and how he does these kind of like body horror things. I was like, that would be really fun if you have like their face can literally stretch, and I think that's how the drawings of the skulls came like through that. So like, like the skull literally stretches, and that's how we came upon the design. And then we said like, okay, let's just put it all out of order and let people reconstruct and figure out that, we're talking about the same individual. We're just following this thing throughout like a century, essentially.
What was it like working with Luke Baker?
It's great. I don't know. I just really love collaboration in general, because you can just like think of, okay, what are your strengths? What are my strengths? What can we do, like combining them? I really love the ideas that Luke came up with, like, oh, what if we had like a kid's drawing, or what if we had a police sketch of one of them? And we kind of really get each other in the sense of we never want to show the creature directly, because whatever your imagination can come up with is probably worse than whatever we can draw. We would like to cover like the future, like what happened after the 1970s in the last we see of the facade. So we have like a few decades to have him go through different identities and stuff, and we never want to show it directly. That's one of the troubles with it, is like, oh, we could just have like a cell phone picture of it, because everybody has a good camera nowadays, but we don't want that. That wouldn't be fun.
Is there, you'd say, like a message to this piece?
Like, what if there was a parasite, but that took advantage of like society? It takes the place of one person and just like coasts or through life, being that person until people start getting suspicious of them, move on to the next one. That's kind of where we wanted to go, like just as a fun concept. But I don't think there's like any deeper thematic elements there.
Awesome. Cool. Are you the facade?
I can't comment on that.
The following pictures and documents were retrieved from the remains of the ship Storaker. Its crew and most of its cargo lost in a storm off the coast of Denmark while returning from an archaeology expedition to the Viking burial ground of Sondrum. Excerpt from the diary of Maine archaeologist Tor J. Arn, 22nd of March, 1905. Today, we dug up something strange. It wasn't far from the other graves in the area, but it was buried deeper. The extraction was difficult, since it had become encased in a hard piece of sandstone we had to break through. This artifact, it doesn't look like anything we've seen from the Vikings. It seems too detailed for one of their carvings, and the dark stone it's made out of is certainly not from the region. A piece of loot from one of their raids, perhaps? We'll have to bring it back to Copenhagen and analyze it further. The crew is quite disturbed by the artifact, and I've heard far-fetched speculation about its origins. As much as I hate to admit, it makes me feel uneasy too. There's one more thing I'm hesitating to write down. When I touched its surface, I felt a slight vibration, nearly imperceptible. None of the others seemed to notice. Thinking back on it, that was likely the result of a tired mind and an imagination stirred by old wives' tales. Tomorrow we'll load it up on the ship with the rest of the findings and come back to the museum. May, 1909, Brisbane, Australia. Fisherman Adam James Clark makes an unusual catch. He would keep the object in his home, fascinated by it, until his disappearance 6 months later. Adam was a dutiful diarist. In his notes, we can see the slow progression of his mental state and his deepening obsession with the cocoon. May 14th, 1909. The strangest thing got tangled in my net today. I have no idea what it is, but I managed to pull it to shore. I think it may be a live egg or a cocoon of some sea animal. If I put my hand to it, I can feel it twitch a little. Seems to survive well enough out of the water, for now. Wonder if something will come out of it. A photographer was at the jetty, and I got back and got me some pictures of the thing. We'll be here to keep some record if it ends up rotting away. The husks takes up a great deal of space in my room, but that beats empty. It's a good listener, though not too fond of conversation, it seems. I've been waiting so long for him to come out. Sometimes I put my ear to the shell and listen to him move in there, metamorphosing. I read that during the cocoon phase, insects melt into some sort of liquid inside, and then rebuild themselves into something new. Whatever he looks like, I can't wait to welcome him into this world. I wonder if he'll see me as a father. Sometimes I'm afraid to leave the room and fear that the husk that traps him may open while I'm not here. I hope the grandkids haven't missed me. This last diary entry is dated November 3rd of that year. Adam was never seen again. November 3rd. He nearly doesn't move anymore. Is he dead? He needs something to finish his metamorphosis. I think he needs me. He needs me! I must enter. I must unite with him. Give his body structure. He is Adam Clark. I am him, bound by a husk, prison of flesh and chitin. I will bring him to where I found him, pry his shell open, climb inside, and jump into the water as we become one. We will finally complete his beautiful transformation. We will be free. Weeks later, a fishing boat would discover what appears to be the remains of the shell, broken and completely empty. 1910, Northport, Maine. An unidentified carcass washes up on shore. Local newspapers report. Strange shell washes ashore. Residents from Northport reported a strange animal washing up ashore this morning.
"'Tis a honkin' lobster. We thought it was a whale at first,"
said Eugene Morel, local fisherman.
"We were going to boil it, but tain't no meat inside."
The carcass was left on the docks, so a biologist from Maine University could identify it. Tragedy in Northport. Friday morning, the body of Jimmy Hall, 12-year-old boy from Northport, was found lying on the docks. The child appears to have slipped and fallen on his head while sneaking out at night to see an unidentified carcass that had washed up on shore. The town's fishermen who had discovered the animal claimed it carried a curse and took it upon themselves to destroy the remains of the lobster-like shell by burning it, much to the chagrin of 2 Maine University biologists who had come to inspect it. Unearthed pictures from the Australasian Antarctic Expedition. Year, 1913. Something strange is found in the ice. Cecil Madigan's diary on the subject. 17th January, 1913. The sleighing party was a total success. We mapped a large area east of the base, but the most fascinating finding was what appears to be an enormous larva, as big as a man. I am no biologist. McLean keeps saying it'll be the discovery of the century. The insect was perfectly preserved in the ice, so we sawed around it and brought back the whole block. The whole team had a toast to the discovery. Due to Mawson's team's unfortunate journey, a small group was left in Antarctica for a whole year more than expected. 9th of February, 1913. It is starting to dawn on me that we were staying for more than 1 year. Mawson came back and told us of his tragic journey. We will miss Ninnis and Metz, but no use wallowing. The ship has sailed. This year, I will assist McLean in studying the insect. The crew has taken to calling her Margot, after Maggot. We will not break the ice as the body might be fragile. Jeffries, the new arrival, has taken a lot of interest in the bug, and keeps coming to see it, asking all sorts of questions. He could become an annoyance. Excerpts from Sidney, Jeffries, and Madigan's diaries from the incident that led to the loss of the specimen in the winter of 1913. Jeffries would never recover his sanity after the expedition. 2nd of August, 1913. He broke it. That madman, Jeffries, completely lost his block. Went to the storage room in the middle of the night and took an axe to Margot. He minced her so thin we couldn't recover a single piece of her. Still this work, and we will not be able to bring a thing back to Australia. We found Jeffries outside, repeating that he had freed her over and over. We locked him in, since he's become a danger to the mission. Last surviving photographs from the secretive De La Cruz family. Mexico, 1910 to 1920s. The following documents were smuggled out by Adrian de la Cruz, a disowned relative. According to him, the thing in the photo is who the family called Tio Alfredo. The de la Cruz were local landowners. They lived in an isolated estate in Morelos for generations, surrounded by croplands and pastures. They were rarely seen outside, leading locals to circulate many rumors about the family and their sickly disposition. Adrian de la Cruz was the only household member known to have escaped. After fighting in the revolution, he chose not to come back and left to Mexico City, where he studied chemistry and met his wife, Cristina. The pictures were retrieved by him, sent with the following letter. Cristina, I am sorry for leaving without a word. I came back to my family home. Something was left undone. You will not believe this, so I put some photos in this envelope. This thing, Tio Alfredo, it has always been there, in the attic. I gave it my blood. We all did. I don't know how long it has been with us, since the time of my great-grandfathers, or more. And for this long, everyone has been convinced that it is a part of the family. Maybe it used to be, but none of that matters. I need to break this cycle and save them from this torture. I have brought a vial of cyanide. I will drink it, then go into the attic and let the beast feed on me, just like it used to. That horrible, empty sensation. If all goes well, I will then drink my antidote and come back to you, having rid the world of this devil. Adrian. We have not been able to find any more documentation on the incident, except for a photo, dated to around the same time as the letter, taken in a cemetery near the De La Cruz estate. Italy, 1917. An art collector finds 3 unusual statues in a small museum in Aquila. They appear to represent angels with insect wings, pincers, and extra sets of limbs. Entranced by them, he would acquire the sculptures for his personal collection. To find out more about them, he he contacted Francis Aidan Gasquet, archivist in the Vatican. They found a codex from 15th century Spain. It was commissioned by Antonio Perez de Ayala, a nobleman's son turned monk. It describes his spiritual experience after finding an angel. The angel was said to come from a cocoon found in the sea. It was likely worshipped in Ayala's monastery, as proved by the surviving works of art. We do not know what happened, only a letter that was found in which the Vatican asks for a local noble to help destroy a heresy. The art collector never released the statues from his personal collection, so the old pictures are all the proof we have of their existence. You open the old binder. Inside, some pictures, torn pages, and a letter. Let me tell you of the time I saw one of the megalomorpha. You heard this story before, but these documents should help clear your skepticism. It was 1923, and I was traveling through British Tanganyika. After finishing my studies in anthropology at the age of 24, I was eager to go out and document unknown cultures. During that trip is when I met the Myuu people, a wonderful and rich society with barely any interaction with the outside world. During my 3 weeks with them, I observed their peculiar customs, particularly the constant motif of stag beetles, apparent from their clothes to their buildings and weapons. I first thought it was expert craftsmanship, but I now suspect the objects came from a different source. Myuu culture is very different from that of the surrounding tribes. They show a mix of hunter-gatherer and agricultural traits, and do not seem to have a clear social structure. Their art and religion are unlike anything I have seen. Stories are passed down from the elders to the young. Many of them are centered around the figure of Kinya, depicted in statues as a hybrid of a man and stag beetle. Communication was quite difficult due to the uniqueness of their language, which the translator was not able to fully grasp. I am not proud of having followed them in secret, but if it were not for that, I would not have seen the insect. At first, I thought they were hunting it, but then I realized their interaction looked more like a conversation. They followed a flock of birds to a clearing, where they stopped and chanted in unison. I got closer to take a photograph, but I was seen and had to leave expeditiously. Unfortunately, after this incident, I was not welcome in the village anymore, so I had to resume my journey. As you know, trying to publish this information only led to ridicule and me being cast out from academia. That is why I spent my life trying to prove their existence. Thank you again for your help, friend. I cannot do this alone at my age. Sincerely, Nigel Buckley. 1927, the Turner Bros Circus begins touring the USA with an unusual exhibit. Their publicity claims it is an Amazonian mammoth ant, though no such species has been described. For 2 years, they would tour the Midwest, attracting the curious and skeptics. Very little documentation remains apart from the posters and 2 photographs. The man who appears in the picture and poster is Henry Turner, one of the 2 founders of the circus. In later recollections from his brother Robert, he claimed Henry became obsessed with the ant. Towards the end, he was even sleeping in the cage with it. One day he just took off with the ant, left everything behind. Henry would not be heard from again. The loss of the founder and the stock market crash of 1929 was too much for the circus, which closed that year. Norway, 1953. Erling Jorgensen, a local journalist, visits the isolated parish of Ernis, accused by many of being a cult. His unpublished notes and photographs are the only remaining source on this group and the events that culminated in its destruction. The small parish was based around a modern church. Though initially unremarkable, starting around 1947 the community would take an isolationist turn. Parishioners started shunning external contact, except for the occasional missionary sent to recruit people into the group. In August 1953, journalist Erling Jorgensen was allowed to visit the community, take pictures, and interview their members. Though Erling was given relatively free rein, he was not allowed to enter the church during sermon hours, at which time he was put under watch. The community was headed by Thorhagen, often just described as the bishop, and his 3 sons. The self-proclaimed bishop and his entourage had essentially broken contact with the Church of Norway, forming their own hierarchy. The priests wore masks as part of their vestments. Many of the particular rituals of this group were centered around the youngest members. They wore white clothing and were referred to as initiates. The purpose of their initiation was never made clear. In an interview, a 7-year-old claims, "One day, I will be one with God." According to Erling's notes, on the day of his departure, he was taken over by curiosity. Instead of leaving, he snuck into the church and hid there, waiting for the sermon he had not been allowed to watch. As it started, he saw an immense creature appear from behind the altar. The church has been silent for hours, as that thing pulsates on the wall. I need to do something. Erling's unpublished notes end there. A fire destroyed the church that day. Erling never admitted to having been there. After his death, it was revealed that he had lit the match. Leaked report from the USSR Committee of State Security, KGB, 1961. Full report and translation below. In June 1961, a group of Navy personnel carried out a survey on sunken merchant ships in the Kara Sea, taken down during the Second World War by the Germans. The divers carried underwater cameras with them to document the state of the boats. Upon investigating the survey ship, Academic Shokalshish, sunken by a U-boat in 1943, the diver came upon the nest of some sort of creature resembling an insect of enormous size. Analysis has determined it to be an unknown species, and was given the provisional name of Vivishkova. The details are unclear, as only the camera was recovered, and the rest of the crew deemed the waters unsafe to investigate further. The pictures were taken back to KGB headquarters for analysis and deliberation. We have determined these documents to be of national security interest, and thus will be kept with utmost discretion. The rest of the diving crew has already been dealt with appropriately. Our next aim should be to recover the eggs shown in the pictures. A team will be discreetly assembled to deal with Vivishkova and bring back as many eggs as possible for the study. Scientists are also being gathered in attempts to train the animals as they are born. All of this will take place in our base in Dixon. The aim is to use them on enemy ships in response to American aggression, to neutralize them without leaving a trace of our actions. This could take a toll on their forces without linking back to us. Further developments will be communicated through private channels to the parties involved. Communicated for your information. Signed, Chairman of the Committee, A. Shelepin. 21st of August, 1982. A report on a local TV channel in Sicily.
A Roman ruin has been found last Monday when building a hotel near Modica. Archaeologists are asking for more time to study the elaborate mosaic, but are under pressure from the owners, who want the building done before July. This beautifully preserved mosaic has puzzled historians. Among rich hunting scenes, what looks to be an enormous wasp appears to be eating an antelope. This piece stands out from the other realistic scenes, and does not seem to match any known Roman myths. The photo above was recovered by the daughter of the late head archaeologist, Piero Baglieri. No other sources on the mosaic can be publicly found, nor information about the hotel that was built on top. Among the documents Nigel Buckley sent in 1984, you find his notes and illustrations. What can we glean from the new sightings we have documented of these creatures? They clearly appear to be related to insects, only at a much larger scale. Are they a part of the same species? Or perhaps a broader genus or family? Provisionally, I have decided to treat them as a single genus, which I call megalomorpha. I cannot say if the myriad forms we see are due to extreme individual variability, or if several species exist. What makes me lean towards the single species variability hypothesis is the shell found in Maine. These molts are more common in insects going through partial metamorphosis, which suggests megalomorphae may be capable of radical changes in form later in life. Nigel had spent all of his life studying these insects since he reportedly found one in Tanganyika in 1923. He passed away in 1986, not being able to complete his life work of redeeming his image in the scientific community. Most of the evidence you've seen so far is his work. Pictures found in an abandoned remotely operated vehicle, 2004. It was recovered from the seafloor, damaged, and with its umbilical cord cut off, 3 years after being lost during the survey of the sunken ship Myuu. The vehicle was found during a seafloor survey by the Polynesian Oil and Gas Company. They were attempting to build an oil pipeline in Hawaii. The company closed in 2014, but an ex-employee managed to hold on to these documents. The note reads as follows. As some of you know, during the seafloor survey done between Honolulu and Molokai for the Hawaii Pipeline project, an abandoned remotely operated vehicle was found on the ocean floor. We believe it was used to survey the Myuu, a Japanese fishing boat sunk after an accident with the submarine USS Greenville in 2001. The ROV was probably lost during the survey, as we found the umbilical cord severed and signs of damage. The body of the vehicle was lifted, and some data recovered from it. Among it, some pictures were found. These were, to our knowledge, not obtained by the Navy. The CEO wishes to inform you that this matter will be resolved internally, as to not cause a delay in the pipeline project that may make it go over budget. We urge all employees to handle this matter with discretion, and not share this information with external sources, as it may trigger an unnecessary environmental inquiry that could damage the company. Last of all, as we reach the last stretch of this project, we want to congratulate you for all your efforts.
It is thanks to each one of our valued employees that we have managed to come this far, and we are confident that with your help, we will keep reaching new heights. Strange trail cam pictures were recovered from a now-defunct hunting forum, October 2006. These screenshots were saved at the time by a user, but no archived version remains. The original poster could not be tracked down. Any new information on this subject would be greatly appreciated.
So I'm a bit spooked. Set up a couple trail cams yesterday, and when I looked at them today, I saw these two pics. Can anyone help me identify what this is? This was in Overton County, Tennessee, by the way. You think I could have discovered something new?
Lol, I have trouble believing this. Don't you think a huge insect like that would have been seen before? Either it's a weird camera trick where the bug is actually close, or you're full of it, friend.
Wow, okay. No need to be rude, Moose. I don't think there's a camera trick here. You can see there's trees in front of it, so it's not just the bug that got close. There's lots of unexplained animals that science hasn't studied yet, so that's a very closed-minded way of seeing things. I have no idea how to use Photoshop either, if that's what you imply. I don't even think it's possible to fake something like this. Anyway, if there's anyone willing to actually help out, please just let me know.
Well, I guess I'm not sleeping tonight. Justin, I'm no photography expert, but this sounds like something that would happen with old cameras. Sometimes they would shoot twice in the same film. That's why people would see ghosts sometimes. Maybe something like this happened here and two pictures got mixed up. One of the bugs up close and a normal one. Seems more likely than a giant bug flying out there. Occam razor and all that.
I can understand it's an error, but the odds of that happening twice seems unlikely. The cameras worked well otherwise. Do you folks have any other theories? Or if it's a normal bug, can anyone identify? Bump?
2011. A cave with Neolithic paintings and artifacts is found near Totec, Spain. Among the buried remains is an adult cranium with unknown malformations. The cave art appears to have religious significance. The first scene represents people fighting and escaping what appears to be a large insect-like form with 6 limbs and large horns. Below, people are kneeling before a similar figure in a more solemn pose. They make offerings to it. The following part has been purposefully chiseled off, leaving few recognizable traces. The final scene shows more people kneeling and laying their weapons below what looks like their deities, which show elements of both humans and the previous 6-limbed creature. No other gods of such description are known in the area.
Holy bug fucking shit! Some sort of tree of life of massive mind-controlling insects that has gone mostly undetected for the majority of history, other than isolated incidents of their documentation. I wonder if this is at all related to the giant cocoon that I keep in my closet and constantly pray to. Probably not though. Let's break down what we know. These large insectoid creatures have been sparingly documented throughout history. Spanning from 1905 to the current day, depictions and evidence of these creatures have been leaked into the public light. Despite this, the megalomorpha has still not been acknowledged officially by the scientific community. Scientific community. These creatures are either discovered as a cocoon, or documented later on as various different fully grown insectoid critters. There are either many species of megalomorpha that always go through metamorphosis, or they have incredible variability in what the other side of that metamorphosis might end up looking like. Not only do the megalomorpha go through an intense metamorphosis process, changing their bodies to a myriad of forms, but it appears that the final stage of the megalomorpha lifestyle involves fusing with a human for some reason. And this can be seen in the man-bug monster, the myth, the legend, Tio Alfredo, which translates incorrectly to English as Uncle Creamy Pasta. Tio Alfredo was a megalomorpha that worked his way up the corporate ladder by fusing with what I assume was once the real Tio Alfredo. Evidently, Uncle Bug had been with the family since the time of the narrator's great-grandfather, and had convinced them that it was a part of the family.
I think Tio Alfredo is deserving enough of love that he shouldn't have to convince them of anything. All he wanted was your love and bodily fluid. Isn't that what we all want?
Even though this looks like a clusterfuck of random bug family information, combined with some research from another video, this may illustrate what exactly the hell these creatures are. One way we can potentially further understand what the megalomorpha are is by not stealing the information directly from someone else's video. Speaking of, Valdés-Hevia actually answered a bit of the question of what the hell these bugs are in a Curious Archive video. So I'm gonna not steal that.
The megalomorpha, they can kind of make themselves appear to the people around them as kind of whatever they interpret. And it's based on their previous beliefs. What their background is, they might think it's some sort of deity.
It appears that the megalomorpha manipulates the human mind and manufactures a reality in which the humans love and care for the insects. It becomes their baby, their god, their Tio, whatever they need to be to gain the adoration of the hairless apes in question. From there, it somehow convinces one person to fuse with them, allowing them to change into their final form. Why it needs humans to complete its life cycle is still a mystery, and I'm not sure if these bugs count as a parasite, or if the combo in question is a new animal in its own right. Whatever the case, we can see from the documentation leaks that these creatures have been with us since the days of the Romans, the Vikings, the cavemen, and continue to be with us in the days of online hunting forums, I guess. I want to see megalomorpha porn. No, I don't. Since before humanity could write things down, these creatures have been here, infiltrating select pockets of the human species and controlling their minds for unknown, possibly nefarious purposes. Before we had our technology, our language, our society, we served only these insects. Who knows? Maybe they control our numbers in a much greater ratio than we think. Maybe we're just a giant, busy ant colony. And under the surface, everything we do is in service of our one massive, pulsating queen. Oh god, I'm gonna come! One theory I have is that the megalomorpha themselves are the reason they haven't been discovered yet. Think about it. If you were a giant mind-controlling insect, would you want the little weird hairless apes that you're controlling to know enough about your existence to be capable of forming an opinion about what you're doing? Because I wouldn't. I would mind control the apes into thinking it's not a problem because I'm not real. One giant question I have about these mind-manipulating buggies is, what the hell do they want? Chances are that the megalomorpha just wants what we all want, a bigger dick to live. It's likely that this is just the evolutionary strategy that these creatures have always known. They stayed close to humans and brainwashed the apes to care for them because it worked as a survival strategy, just like cats. By controlling the little wrinkles in their head meatballs, the insects could ensure not only that they'd survive, but in fact live comfortably off the hard work of humanity. It's also possible that these creatures aren't just big brainwashing bugs, and do have some sort of ulterior motive. But in true unknowable horror fashion, what exactly that motive would be is impossible to gauge. Moving on from what is literally happening in these documentations, because no matter how hard I try, I'm going to be too stupid to figure this out in the entirety, the story of megalomorpha is quite thematically rich as well. One clear theme of this story is metamorphosis. Not only is it the literal life cycle of the massive bug critters in question, but the theme of change is present throughout the timeline, especially in the longer and later entries. Individuals, families, even large communities can be transformed under their influence. One can see this clearly in the fisherman's obsession, the prehistoric people going from hunting the insects to worshipping and finally becoming one with them, and even in Adrian de la Cruz's escape from the cycle. In the end, both humanity and megalomorpha come together and change into something new, something grander than both of them separately. One may wonder about the inspiration behind this story. Hevia states that he was inspired by Lovecraft's storytelling methods, in which he told his stories through found documents that only had little traces of evidence throughout the years. It was also inspired by real-life historical accounts of expeditions. The combination of these two makes sense to me, because the only person who's going to be more vague than Lovecraft is the guy who's literally paid to write all that shit down. Do you have any theories about the megalomorpha? If you should comment below and I'll tell you why you're wrong. I'm smarter than you. What would you say was your inspiration behind the megalomorpha series?
I was just like looking to do something horror, old school. And the idea I had is like, I want this to be like archaeologists digging something up. And I had found an image. I was like, okay, this image, this guy is standing next to a tomb, it's like dug up under the earth. I like that. But what should I put in there? I had no idea. And I was scrolling Twitter one day and I saw someone say, like, just someone post a picture of a huge cocoon on their hands, a really big one, and saying like really freaked out, like, what the fuck is this? This looks like an alien baby. And people in the comments explain, oh, that's the cocoon for I don't recall the species of moth, one of the biggest species of moth. That's why the cocoon was so large. I was like, that's really cool. Like that looks so alien just on its own. That needs to be what I do with it. And then I edited some stuff on it later on when I did more cocoons. I didn't really edit them that much because back then I didn't really know what I was going to do. I didn't know it was going to be a series or anything. So back then it was just like, oh, I'm just going to edit some like more creepy stuff on this cocoon so it looks kind of like weird or biomechanical and stuff. I just did that without thinking about it twice, and that eventually became megalomorpha.
If you were to describe maybe the theme and underlying message of the Megalomorpha series, what would you describe it as?
A lot of the overarching theme is like metamorphosis, and it's not only like the literal metamorphosis of the bugs that literally metamorphose with humans, but it's also like about the changes they cause around them to people, and it's like how a normal farming community can become a cult. For example, you can like the Tio Alfredo one is a metaphor for abuse in a family and how it can perpetrate through generations, and often like the people in it, they can't see what's going on until they get out. So it's a story about like someone going back to their family that they escaped long ago, and going back to take revenge on an abusive family member, basically. Transformation in that sense, in that case, like the person like went away and was able to change like their perspective and then realize that, oh, what I went through was fucked up. Or the old fisherman who we can clearly see is like really lonely and suddenly finds this cocoon, and the cocoon makes him believe that it's child, and he starts taking care of it like a child, and eventually like gives his own life away to it. Taking real life things, real life situations, and using the megalomorpha as like metaphors for these changes,
I know you mentioned earlier that you got your start more in medicine. The character of Nigel Buckley, how he got kind of ostracized. Did your experience in the scientific community at all shape how you portray the scientific community later on in your work?
Not really. I think Nigel Buckley is kind of an asshole. I like making asshole main characters. Sometimes they get what's coming to them. In case of Nigel Buckley, he just gets ignored. But Nigel in this case was just like, hey, I'm this young guy who's in a colonial place, just going to places where I'm not invited and ignoring people's warnings. I come across like something that's horrifying to me, and that kind of like takes a whole turn on his life and kind of ruins his life. In this case, like the whole like scientific community ignoring him is like, it's this punishment for like, he gets his own life ruined by his hubris and by not respecting the people he was like meant to be studying, quote unquote. Yeah. So in this case, like the scientific community isn't really like, it's more of like a metaphor for the punishment this guy gets. And he's also like a really like useful character, because he's like one of the few people that he's keenly aware of the megalomorpha. He's actually seen one, not for long enough to be like brainwashed by them, but is clearly like, changed the course of his life. So he's the person who has gathered a lot of this evidence, so that it's not like all disjointed.
Is there an idea about how the megalomorpha would directly influence the human mind biologically in that speculative biology kind of vein?
Yeah, that's something I've kind of left in the air, because you could interpret the megalomorpha as like more biological things or like supernatural things. I want to keep both of the interpretations like plausible and equally readable, right? Because I think both are good, and I don't want to take like a side there. If it were biological, it could just be like pheromones. Like in this case, the moth I used in that story is Creatonus gangis. I'm probably mispronouncing that. It's a moth that has like an inflatable organ. I call it the inflatable moth ass, that it uses to release pheromones. So it's like, oh, that's really cool. Like it just stands there in the back of the church, inflates a huge organ, and just stays there pulsating. Everyone's just watching in silence, and they're being brainwashed. They think they're seeing like an angel, and this guy comes in, it's just snuck in, and it's obviously like still not like going through the brainwashing that this whole community has, is left speechless, and never speaks about it again until his deathbed. So he is kind of brainwashed in a way. Like he is like mentally really affected by the megalomorpha, and it's also like, as with a lot of the characters that come across them, it just changes the course of their life completely.
If given the opportunity, would you fuse with a bug?
Good question. I mean, they can live for who knows how long, an indeterminate amount of time once they fuse with a human. So if I'm really old and yeah, like maybe yeah, let's go with it. I want to be immortal. Even though I'd probably lose all my humanity in the way, but it would be a fitting end for me.
If you were asked to describe your work for someone who's never heard of it, what would you say?
So I would say it's like posts that maybe your grandma sent you on Facebook that are complete misinformation, but your grandma like just believed it outright. Like turning that into a more serious art form and a storytelling like medium, using Photoshop and like stuff that looks real, at least at first glance, to kind of like immerse you in a story in a different way than other mediums can let you do.
Are there themes that you find yourself consistently returning to in your art? And if so, why is that?
On the one hand, it's like folklore, because I just love folklore. And for example, like I'm from Asturias, which is a small region in the north of Spain. And it has really beautiful and interesting folklore with like Celtic roots. Whenever I look for art to represent, like I want to tell somebody who's not familiar about the Gualebre, like a really cool dragon creature that exists there, I go look for art, and it sucks. It's really bad. There's not a lot of it, and it's not very good. I'm like, I want to change that. So that's the theme I always come back to, folklore, because I just love folklore in general, and I want to represent my own folklore that I grew up with. There's also a theme that I go back to a lot is parasites, because I studied medicine, and like it's like just studying medicine and seeing all the messed up stuff that can happen to the body is it kind of like it makes you immune to a lot of the like icky stuff that a lot of people don't like. Parasites are something that I couldn't like even through like understanding them and learning more about them, it still feels like I don't know, super like icky and horrible to me, like at a deeper level, I think. So I love parasites, and I keep doing stuff that, you know, it's either like a more literal parasites, like, I don't know, the womb worm that you discovered, or it can be a more like, I guess, metaphorical parasite, like something that maybe takes over your mind, like the megalomorpha, right? Where they're not like as physically dangerous, though they can be, they're huge bugs, but they are, you know, the scary thing about them is that they kind of convince you of anything they want to, and that's kind of like, you know, they're taking over your mind in the same way that a parasite takes over your body.
You mentioned earlier you studied medicine. Do you find that your experience in science has influenced your artistic expressions?
It's given me a lot of like language to do medical horror. Like it's very rare for an actual like a horror artist or horror like storyteller to be well versed in medicine, because usually people who study medicine will stay in that lane for the rest of their lives. So there's not a lot of people who can do this. It's like this is a very specific niche to me, and it gives me like enough language to sound convincing while telling like complete bullshit. To the point where there's actual doctors who have kind of fallen for, like at least like partially fallen for stuff I've done. I don't know if you've covered the one with the teeth coming out of the bones, where it's like an X-ray of a hand. Mm-hmm. So it's just a hand X-ray, and there's teeth coming out of the bones. And I posted that on Twitter, and I was just looking through the replies. And I see someone with a profile pic with like a white coat, tagging another person, like doctor something something, tagging doctor something something. It's like, oh, this had us fooled. It was just like a conversation between them. But what I gathered from it is like they shared this on a group chat with like other rheumatologists, like literally the doctors who, if this disease were real, they would be studying it. They shared it on a group chat, and they were like freaking out, and they went to search it, and they found out, oh, this is not real, and they were all laughing about it. It's like, oh no, I fooled doctors. I was too convincing.
I would be proud of that. That's cool.
It was funny. At least they realized. So.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah.
Going on that tangent, since you make things that could, in some perspectives with people with very little context, be considered hoaxes, other than that story, is there anything where you posted something artistically and you looked back at it later and you went, oh no, this is this is not what I intended?
Yeah, so I always try to do stuff, even if I do like, especially with medical stuff, I think that's the one that's most, like if a bad actor were to take it, they could misinterpret it in like the worst ways, because there's a lot of medical misinformation and it leads to like real world harm. So I always try to keep it like fantastical enough that you know, people maybe while they're reading it, they freak out a little bit, but they quickly realize, oh, of course this is bullshit, right? Like this bug that eats your brain from the inside, it's impossible that it could learn to replicate the activity of your brain and like learn to be you, essentially. And then like their bugs cannot grow that large, like physically. So if you apply a little bit of logic, you quickly realize, okay, that's bullshit. So that if somebody were to misinterpret it, you know, they wouldn't fool a lot of people. But yeah, I always also try to think like, okay, if someone like a anti-vaxxer were to take some of my art and use it as like, you know, this is what the vaccine will do to you. I always try to think about that and think like, okay, if they were to take this, like, could they use it to further misinformation or something? And I try to stay away from that sort of thing. Yeah, I always try to think about that because it can be dangerous if misused.
You can see some of it in your work, but who would you say are your biggest artistic and literary inspirations?
There's, on the one hand, like stylistically, I would say there's a little bit of Lovecraft, some of Lovecraft's stories, and like taking aside like what a horrible person he was in real life, just like his storytelling method, which were really kind of pioneered a sort of like in cinema we would call the found footage genre, right? It's like these found documents, could be called. I really like that style where it's instead of telling a story directly through like a narrator, you could say also Dracula is a good example of this. It's told through documents that happen in the real world. So it's like, it's letters and reports and stuff. So you're getting like little pieces of evidence that were passed down from when this story happened. I really like that storytelling method, and also trying to combine a lot of storytelling methods from early creepypasta, which is a weird thing to call an inspiration because it was mostly very badly written. Not to disparage the people who wrote them, like they were mostly kids, I assume. but they kind of took advantage of the internet as a place to put stories, and as like a new way of publishing things, which is really interesting. And they really used the sort of found footage genre. They mix it in with like internet stuff. I really like that. I really like that mix. A really good example of this creepypasta storytelling method, I think, is the early Slenderman stories. Like when people were coming up with Slenderman in the Something Awful forums, and it was just kind of like this collective storytelling, and people were trying to come up with, oh, here's an old document of like a German manuscript from the Middle Ages, and it shows a really similar creature to the Slenderman, and they would edit an old drawing. I really like that storytelling style. Yeah, then Junji Ito, for example, I think it's a very obvious inspiration for the Fractal series and for a lot of stuff. I love how Junji Ito takes like just interesting concepts, like fun concepts, and sometimes kind of absurd things, and turns them into really cool horror. What if there was every person had a balloon that looked like their face, whose only objective was to kill them, and suddenly like every person's balloon appears, and it's like an apocalypse scenario where everyone's being chased by their own balloon. It's like, how did you come up with that? What a strange story. I love it. And then like more modern stuff, like the current, I guess, wave or community of horror artists on the internet, I think it always inspires me. I've collaborated with a lot of them. You could say like Trevor Henderson, David Romero, who I've done the Lycanthrope series with. Luke Baker, I did the facade with. We're actually planning more stuff on that, but I won't spoil.
This is kind of a basic piece that you have probably been asked a lot before in every interview, but if you had to pick a favorite, what piece would that be and why?
I would say Megalomorpha is like, it's kind of like my child in that way. It's the very first horror piece that I ever did was the first part of Megalomorpha, the one with the archaeologists finding the buried cocoon. That's like the very first horror thing I did, and Megalomorpha grew from that. It was meant to be like a one-off thing. And I said, what if I did more? And that's how the series was born, and that's how I started doing horror. And you can see, if you just read it in like chronological order of how the chronological order of when I wrote them, you can see me like get better at storytelling and try to tell longer and more complex things, especially the last few ones I'm really proud of. It's gotten to the point where I actually have quite a few Megalomorpha things like half done, but I expect so much from myself that it's like the expectations of, oh, this has to be like It's megalomorpha, so it has to be my best stuff. I get stuck with it because I I can't finish the images. I'm never happy with them, you know.
What drew you to horror art specifically?
It was around 2020. It was during the confine, like when we were all stuck at home. Back then I was doing like surreal art. I was doing very different stuff, still Photoshop, but I was doing a very different style. And I had been doing that for a few years. I was kind of burned down on it. More than anything, I wanted to tell a story. I wanted to not just have the image like on its own, but I wanted to say a little more and try some more storytelling stuff. So I came up with, I should try and do like something horror related, and I would like to do it like old school, with like old black and white photos that I got from like a public domain archive. Yeah, there was just like an experiment at first. Like I just want to do something a little bit different and see if I like it, and you know, then the rest is history. I guess I did like it.
What drew you to art in the first place?
As silly as that might sound, one of the main drivers of me doing art was playing Spore, the video game Spore. I used to love that as a kid. There was this little like Spanish speaking community that I made a few friends through there, that some of them I still keep to this day. Since Spore didn't really have like direct messages that you could send to other users, we would just like make a bunch of creatures and stuff, and people would just talk in the comments. It was chaotic and very silly. A lot of them started DeviantArt accounts. I was like, I joined DeviantArt. Back then, so my mom used to work as like a graphic designer freelance, and she had a Mac computer with all the Adobe programs pirated. At some point she changed her computer. She gave me her old one that had like everything in it. It had Photoshop and many other programs in it. And I just started messing around with Photoshop. And I said, this is kind of like Spore in a way. Like, I don't know if you've played Spore, but...
Oh yeah, all the time when I was a kid. I actually recently got a PC because I needed to get a new computer, and I got a PC because it can play Spore.
Yes, hell yeah. I recently replayed it with... I played it on stream with like a few mods and stuff just to add more parts and remove the complexity limits. It was really fun. I started using Photoshop, and it was kind of like Spore. Like, you have parts, you can take chunks of pictures, move them around, and so I just really enjoyed that. And that was, I guess, kind of like the first time I did art more seriously.
What would you say are you looking forward to for the future of your work?
There's so many things. I just want to like always try new stuff. First off, I want to close off my current series because I don't want to have the sword above me of like, your two big unfinished series are still pending. But yeah, I want to finish Fractal. I want to like at least finish the parts of Megalomorpha that I have in mind, because I think I could just do Megalomorpha forever if I wanted to. It's all individual stories, so you could just keep going. But at least I want to do the ones I had in mind currently. But apart from that, I'd like to also try new stuff. I'd like to try maybe more written stuff without image or with barely any images. Maybe try to write a book or a short novel or something. I would like to learn some video compositing, which I don't know a lot about, and it's a different skill. Maybe try out some found footage video stuff as well. I don't know, there's so many things I want to try in so little time.
If any of you guys want to see more of my work, I got a website. You can see all of it for free, high quality. I got social medias as well, and I got a Patreon where you can support my work. Every few months, you get a little card pack to support me. And this card pack is full of little Polaroid photos.
If you like this video, you should like, comment, subscribe with all notifications enabled, or I'll give you a parasite. Shout out the inner circle. Love y'all.
Bye.